What's up, everybody? How y'all doing today? It's your boy, Jovonni Christian, the host of The Beginning of the Never Ending. In this chapter, we archive the story of Curtis King. In his origin story as an artist, you will hear a producer's journey of creating treasures with trash. Now, whether touring with the biggest artists in the world or writing about the love of his life and his son, his book, The Prosperous Hip Hop Producer, accompanies this show so well. We're going to edit it right there. You see it? It's just like poof. It just showed right up. The power of editing. So anyway, we also got a painting donated by MKC, also known as Mukyungi. Now, this piece was chosen by Mr. King himself. We would like to take a moment to ask our community, please, if you're watching, share this story and watch the story through its entirety. And if you find value, future shows, you want to check it out, go join our After Dark channel. It's really cool. We also have a Discord channel. If you'd like to join our community, please check it out. It's also you can find in the description below. But if you're an artist, would like to donate some paintings and potentially be featured on our show, you can message our moderator on Discord as well. And in there, we discuss topics and share ideas and collaborate with each other. We just want to help each other grow. But if you watch our show live, we host it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So join us, get involved. You never know. You might be invited on the show. So without further ado, Mr. Curtis King. Hello, what's up? What's good? Thank you for everyone for being patient. Welcome to the beginning of the never ending. We're about to hop into an AM edition. We're going to jump into the story and archive the life of a new member of the squad of the Nomads, right? Mr. Curtis King.
Let's go. I didn't know I was joining the squad. I came for a conversation.
It's our wall, man. We got the wall of fame here. You know what I mean?
I've never gone to anywhere, an establishment where I get to be on the wall before I even have a conversation. That's amazing.
It's awesome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to jump into this. I'm really interested in your story. For those who don't know how this works, this is again the beginning of the never ending. We believe that every life has not just only a beginning, but also is a legacy that's passed down from generations to generations. And our focus is to try to archive as many stories as possible, so that people are not forgotten. So I'm excited that we were able to kind of sit down with you today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
As we always start off with the very, very beginning. Ethnicity, ancestry, where does it all begin? Do you know?
Interesting question, only because I know that it's black on my father's side. That's something that I always knew growing up. But on my mother's side, it was a little bit of a challenge to figure out because she was adopted.
Oh.
And I didn't meet my biological grandmother on her side until 1997 or 8.
Whoa.
So then I started to recognize, okay, so there's Irish running through my blood. But I mostly identify with the black side because that's just been my experience. The lessons that I've been taught from my grandparents and my father, the areas that I have been in, it's just been that plus my name being Dwan with an apostrophe. It's very easy to figure out who I am, and people kind of get surprised sometimes when they see me and they're like, "You're Dwan?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Dwan."
I'm the one.
Dwan, that's crazy. I haven't heard that since middle school, but I'm welcome here for it.
Let's
go.
Welcome
here for it.
So you mentioned that your grandparents you were really close with on your father's side?
Yeah, on my father's side, definitely. And it's crazy. I was thinking about them on the way here. It's so weird. That's one of the first questions. I was thinking about them on the way up here, and I don't want to, jump over your question, but so much of the music I listen to, so much of the music I gravitate towards, it's weird. Like whenever I hear like Wynton Marsalis or I hear anything that reminds me of the Cosby Show, I immediately feel like I get warped back into the 90s, and I'm in San Diego in the living room while my grandmother's watching Golden Girls or my grandfather's watching The Price is Right, or his stories as he calls it. You know, don't you dare call it soap operas. That's his stories. But I was thinking about them on the way up here. They unfortunately both passed away, but I was thinking about them and just I'm a nostalgia-holic is what I call it. So yeah, I definitely were close to them.
Can you describe your grandmother?
My grandmother, very strong-willed. She did not bite her tongue. She was the type that she'd be quick to tell you might be 16, but I'm 61. And then I started looking at my cousin like, I don't know if that math is right, but I don't think we should say anything out loud because we might get hurt. So my grandmother's Southern. She's from, I believe, either Baton Rouge or Lafayette, Louisiana. It's where the majority of my family is from. And so my grandmother was no nonsense, but I had the biggest heart, you know, especially if you're a friend of mine, if your extended family, all the kids get treated the same, the equal love. I never had a time where I went out there and was hungry. I don't care if I drove out there as an older teenager and I was 2 a.m. It was always a pizza for me, just waiting to be in a frozen pizza. She would literally put it in her extra fridge to make sure that me and my cousins were fed. So big heart, but no nonsense.
You said Louisiana.
Louisiana, yeah, that's where the majority of my family is on my grandfather and my grandmother's side.
So is that how they met in Louisiana?
I don't know. That's a great question. I do not know the origin story of how they met, but we spent many of family reunions out there.
Out there?
Yeah, and that's when the first time I ever got called a city boy. Before what it means today, he was like, "Oh, yeah, that's them city folk right there." I was like, "What does that mean, cousin?" Like, let's talk about that city slang. I said, "What does that mean?"
So the cooking must be amazing, man.
It was. From what I remember, it's just, man, there's a difference between food that makes you full and there's a difference between food that makes your soul full, right? And that's one thing I know, that when my grandparents were around, it wasn't that far away. No matter where it was at, we're going to be next to some good food. I mean, even if you want to extend it out to fast food, my grandfather is the reason I have a love for Breakfast Jacks, and Popeye's chicken. Like, and now I'm pescatarian, so I don't get to enjoy it, but just the smells in the air when I pass by, it just instantly reminds me of them. But yes, good food, man.
You can describe your father. Grandfather. My apologies.
Grandfather, he not a man of many words, but had a military background, straight shooter. He loved his Chargers. He loved his football. He loved his boxing. I'm seeing him right now watching a fight and moving around in his seat. It was just the funniest thing as a kid. But discipline was definitely at the foundation of who he was. He used to give me and my cousin a rule. He said, "You get 1 soda a day. For this whole summer that you spending out here, you get 1 soda a day. And you only get to do that if you go out there and do your yard work." So he's very much about discipline. He was the first person I saw, aside from my father, that every day, like regimen, 7 a.m. in the morning. I don't care if it's the weekend, weekday, 7 a.m. in the morning, same regimen. Go get my newspaper, go run a few errands. He'd always wear his hat. And it's ironic because now that I'm in my late 30s, I find myself wearing my hat to go do my errands. But yeah, man, he had his TV shows that he watched. He loved his Price is Right. He loved guessing prices and telling people when they were idiots because "Oh, you're dumb. That's not how much the car is. What are you doing?" But I have the fondest memories of him as well because, like I said, he wasn't a man of many words. But if you asked him questions, he for sure was gonna surprise you with some of the answers and things because you never know when people are not of many words. You never know what's circulating in their mind. He was definitely one of those cases where it was like, "Grandpa, I didn't even know all that was going on."
Sure. I know this is weird to ask this question, but you mentioned San Diego.
Yeah.
Louisiana to San Diego. Like, I'm just trying to get understanding of how that process happened.
Your guess is probably as good as mine, but I assume it's because of my grandfather's Military service. So moving from base to base.
Sure. Do you know what branch?
I do not. I want to say the Navy. I want to say the Navy.
Yeah, Coronado maybe. Yeah.
Maybe, but I do remember seeing the hats in the garage. I do remember seeing when we would go to the base. You know, where I got my first knockoff FUBU. Thank you, Grandma. Was from the base. I wouldn't dare say anything about it. I was like, I don't know if that F is. I don't know if that's an F. I think that's a B. I'm not going to say anything about it, but that was very much a part of my experience around them, was just kind of going to the base, or even 4th of July. There would be like picnics that we would go to that were, you could tell it was his military, family and whatnot. But yeah, man, definitely was. I want to say it had to be the military that got them over to San Diego.
I know your mother's side, you didn't get to meet her till much later,
right?
In terms of her grandparents, but do you know much about them? Or?
Yeah, so she did have her adoptive grandparents. Okay. And I spent a lot of time with them. Wasn't quite the same relationship that I had on my father's side, sure. But I say this: the essentials got taken care of, but it came with a lot of baggage.
Okay.
Specifically with my grandmother. My grandmother, she's a loose cannon. Loose cannon. I don't know a whole lot about her story. I know she used to stay in the Aliso Village projects. She won't ever let nobody tell. She don't ever bring it up, because I think once she married my grandfather, I'm assuming she kind of got a little bougie. My grandfather showered her with a Mercedes. I never forget his Mercedes Benz. He was so proud of it, and his Range Rover. But she got a Mercedes Benz, and according to the folks in the neighborhood that I've talked to after she passed away, she started acting a little bit different. So that side of things, it was a little bit dicey in terms of what you got. And I mean, I came up with them, but it's.
In what city were they in?
Carson, California.
Yeah, okay.
Carson, California.
So where are you? Like, where's your parents at? Right?
Everywhere.
Yeah. So San Diego, you're Carson. That's a whole.
So I've never lived in San Diego, but I spent some time in Carson. I spent some time in Long Beach. I spent some time pretty much bouncing back and forth from staying either with my mother, but mostly with my dad. Huh. So depending on where my dad was at the time, I probably was there, but there were some stretches of time where I'm assuming when financially things were good with my mom, I would stay with her for a little bit when she probably needed a little bit of help. Then I was with my dad, but both of which were very active in my life all the way through. And I've never known them to be together. I've always known them as being, okay, I'm going to dad's house, I'm going to mom's house. But I would say Carson, Long Beach, some time in like LA, South Central LA, then a little bit of bouncing everywhere. But I think it mostly had to do with whatever jobs they had at the moment, or just wherever life was taking them.
Do you know how they met?
You know the funny thing about having divorced parents, you never quite want to ask that question.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm pretty sure they've told me before. I want to say it might have been ironically in San Diego, but I cannot tell you for sure. I don't know. I'll call my mom and I'm gonna ask her.
Yeah, we might have to do it. I'm curious, really specific here, because you're talking. I'm sorry. Do you know these are LA parents? This is Western kind of like parents from your mother's side in terms of like who raised her. Right. And then you also have like these very Southern parents from your father's side.
Definitely.
I'm really curious of how your personalities of your parents are. What kind of father do you kind of remember him? I'm gonna talk about kind of early childhood type of like.
Yeah. The way I describe my grandmother as being a straight shooter and kind of having her strict moments. That was like my father's balance. My father was. He could be very much a straight shooter. He could be the goofiest person in the world. He could be the most serious person. I remember when I would go to middle school and he would pop up in school, people would be like, who invited Malcolm X? Because he had a look that looked like Malcolm X. Like, who invited? Like, whoa, somebody in trouble. Very serious demeanor. But I mean, also someone who has a really big heart. But yeah, he was definitely the stricter one of both my parents, and my mother. I keep saying was, but you talking about when I was younger.
Yes,
that's why it's doing
I know,
that. Yeah.
I know, but that's what we're.
Yeah, that's why it's a little bit.
Digging deep.
I keep doing that, and I'm like, my mama gonna call me like, boy, I'm still here. She definitely was the one that was more loose. She was, more like affectionate is the word. Very open about her emotions and us expressing those, and so I think that what she might have been missing from my grandparents on her side is what she like overcompensated for and showed a lot of affection, a lot of love, because she didn't get a lot of that from them. And my dad, he was just like military upbringing. He had a bunch of brothers and sisters and a strict mother, and he was definitely more so the stricter parent, for sure.
So is mom's only child here in this situation, or?
Yes, she is the only child.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And you're saying how many brothers and sisters do you think, or I don't know?
On my dad's side?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
4. They have 4 children.
Yeah.
Oldest, children. Youngest, middle?
I think my pops is the second to oldest.
Second to oldest.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a responsibility there.
Definitely. And in many ways, when my grandparents passed away, my father kind of took charge.
Older sister, older brother?
Younger sister, older brother.
Older brother.
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
This is an interesting world here. So your parents are like getting together, right? I don't know if you're comfortable sharing this. Percentage wise, how percentage with your mom, percentage with your dad, let's say in like the first 10 years. I mean, let's say in general.
In general, I would say percentage, maybe like let's say 65. Let's say 70-30 with my dad.
70-30 leaning dad.
No, 60-40. 60-40. Because it was 60-40, I think, is a percentage.
60-40.
I've never thought of it as a percentage, but
I'm
probably.
sorry, I know those are tough questions.
Yeah.
So you're about 60-40%. When you're younger, it's obviously very different from where you are now, especially a Cali boy,
Yeah.
But you come from Southern roots, so family seems like a big dynamic when it comes to that Southern type of like mentality.
It is.
But this is California, so there's constant meeting and running around. What type of personality were you as a child?
Confused. Because there's a lot of who people know today as Curtis King that they don't understand the roots of it, so they think that certain parts of my personality, the tonality of my voice is putting on, and I'm like, I'm just as confused as you. Right? You see light-skinned black male with a Southern accent, and it's like, where does all of this origin story come from? But then when you start thinking about conversations that I've had with both my grandparents, even on my grandfather's side, on my mother's side, come super Southern. So that's all that I came up hearing. I spent more time with my grandparents than I probably spent with kids around the neighborhood, right? So I'm with my grandfather who's from Louisiana. I'm with my other grandfather who's from Louisiana, on both sides. So like both of them, I just picked up a certain like drawl in what I do. And it's just like, that's life. I say certain things. I make certain references that are like dating me. It makes me sound like I'm a lot older than what I am, but that's what I've been around. And so being a Cali boy, there's a lot of confusion because you got to think going to LAUSD or going to these places where folks have like lineage of folks who have stayed here for generation after generation. They're looking at you like, are you Cali? Are you Southern? What is this combination that I'm hearing? And at the time, I didn't know as much as I know now. So when it was asked of me, I didn't know it was weird until it was asked. But now understanding and seeing how the balance of everything works out, it makes so much sense.
Does he need to pull down the mic a little bit?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a tad. Just pull this arm here. Yeah, perfect.
Sweet.
I want you to get comfortable there. I'm one of the things that I can't wait to ask this question. Are you the only child?
No. Oh no.
Okay, then I'm really curious here.
Oh no.
Youngest, oldest, middle,
oldest of all.
Okay, that makes more sense too. Brothers and sisters, what's how's that lean?
So I have, on my mother's side, I have 2 younger sisters.
Okay.
On my dad's side, I have a younger sister, a younger brother. By blood at least, and I have a stepsister as well on my dad's side. But growing up, it was always I was the oldest of my siblings.
And can you tell me like how far apart, or just from you with
to the next one? Probably about 5 years.
5
years, yeah.
So, do you remember your first 5 years
Of life?
It's hard.
I don't remember the last 5 minutes. I'm just playing. I don't.
I don't believe it, man. Because this is amazing right here. Like,
I don't. Like the first 5 years, I can tell you the things that I remember are like they play like movie scenes in my brain. And when I see photos, immediately I can smell something from that time without understanding why I can still have that connection. I don't know where it's stored in my brain, but I'll see a picture and I'll see like a certain design of Coca-Cola, and I'm like, that instantly takes me back to when we lived. What city was that? I don't know. I just remember the church windows, the church pane design that was in this one apartment that I stayed in. And so it's just moments, man. It's moments. It's usually whenever I'm like in a flow state,
sure,
within music or anything artistic, I'll get these visions of like light coming through the windows, and I know I gotta be like 4 or 5 years old, and I see that, but that's about the extent of it.
So are you close with your brothers and sisters?
Most of them. Most of them. Yeah, most of them. Yeah, about 98% of them.
Was it kind of a thing where, I hate to say you're the oldest, right? So
right.
Were you, because you're kind of bouncing a little bit.
Yeah.
Did they kind of accept you, or was it kind of one of those things that, oh, he's here now, oh shoot, like, or because this is young, like you're you're a kid. This is all throughout. You're talking about Carson, right. Long Beach, right. South Central, like LA. You're
just the ones I remember too. Shoot. We bounced around a lot. We bounced around because I went to Montessori school for a second. I want to say that was in.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like I've bounced around a lot. So I've been, the one consistency in my life has been the inconsistency in where I stay. That's been the reoccurring theme. I'd say only until the last 6 years have I stayed in a place and I'm like, okay, everything is stable. But there's still a part of me that's just used to bouncing. But with the bouncing didn't really affect the relationships as much as being at an age where you don't appreciate having a sibling the same way somebody else in a different family dynamic may. So having, like, for instance, maybe a different father with one sister, or having a different mother, or them spending more time with their mother and it's my stepmother, you get different upbringing, so that when we finally come together, we're valuing 2 different things. I'm saying, hey, how are you? How you been? Another one may say, where have you been? So it's like, and really we just end up being like parrots or mirrors of our parents.
Sure,
anyways, right?
Sure.
But that was a thing. It wasn't the distance. And then also too, like, growing up, I was just like, me and my sister were just my older sister was so petty to each other. More so me, because I was older and I knew better. But it was always just like that. We're too close in age, but not close enough to relate to one another. And we both want my mother's love and attention. So that was a huge part of, I guess, the relationship with my older sister. It took us getting into our adulthood before we could truly say, you know what, I really love and appreciate you, and genuinely mean that, because it's interesting when you grow up understanding your siblings as one way, and then you get reintroduced to them as the adult version of themselves. It's a different conversation, right? Even it's happening right now. Like my God, it's so crazy. My youngest sister,
that's on your father?
My mother's side. Just turned 18, and like my brain is trying to like make sense of it, because I'm like, ma'am, I remember when you were a little bitty girl and you had like basketball practice, and it doesn't feel that long ago. But as I talk to her, I'm being reintroduced into, okay, I have to respectfully understand that I'm always your big brother, but you're a human being with your own thoughts, your own ways of making connections. It's beautiful to see play out, because it's like I am full sponge mode. I still give her a hard time. I got to be that older brother where it's like she loves calling me Boomer. That's her favorite thing to call me. And I just shake my fist. I'm like, show me a TikTok dance. Show me a TikTok dance. And she's like, I'm not showing you a TikTok dance, Boomer. But it's all love, man.
It's so interesting. I'm sorry I'm sorry to bring this up, but like you mentioned how so much like your grandmother, your grandfather, you spent a lot of time with them and all the things you know about them. Your mother's side is adopted, so she kind of really compensated that affection and love. And then the two kind of like jumping out at the moment, people that you bring up is the sisters from your mother's side. But you would be around your father's side about 60% of the time. Is there a reason? Do you feel like your brothers and sister from your father's side?
Well, the brother on my father's side was too young.
Oh,
he was a late addition to the family, so I didn't grow up with him like that. I was already well into my 30s by the time he was born. But the sister on that side stayed with her mother.
Got it.
Right, and I didn't have the best relationship when she was my stepmother, and so I'm sure that kind of leaked into our relationship at some point in time, but we didn't really spend anywhere near as much time with one another. And so like kind of see her on the days that he had, I'm assuming he had custody, the days like the weekends and whatnot, but she spent most of her time with her mother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your elementary, middle school, I'm going to blend them together.
Okay. Interesting times. Ooh, man.
I'm curious here because, like, you mentioned that one of the words you used was confused. But I feel like there's more of a personality that you have. There's interests. There's things that you like.
Sure.
Right? Or because you mentioned one of the first things you mentioned with your grandmother, grandfather was music. Specifically, they would watch the Cosby Show.
Yeah.
Obviously they come from a little bit of different culture and background, but were you able to connect with your friends because you're moving around so much? So, I mean,
there were friends in the neighborhood when I was living with, more so with ironically, on my mother's side, it's so all over the place, but on my mother's side, there were friends in the neighborhood that I would connect with. When I would see my grandparents, we would usually be like every other weekend, maybe. We would go visit them in San Diego. There were some kids that we would kind of get to know out there, but it was such a dicey neighborhood in Lemon Grove that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That there was one little boy, man. Rest in peace to him, because I really would have wished we could have seen him as an adult, but he went by Pookie. And my grandma was like, don't you go down there hanging out with Pookie. Pookie just sounded like he might be into some stuff, but we were just kids, man. So to be honest with you, though, I didn't get a lot of chances to connect with a lot of the kids if they weren't at school, because I was mostly latchkey kid. I was mostly at home. I was watching a lot of TV. I would go outside when it'd be the weekends, but during the weekday, it was like, either I am being, at someone's house, as my parents are both working their 9-to-5s, or even like, I remember you said elementary, middle school, more so middle school, I would be at middle school all day at Curtis Middle School, partly where I get my name from. I would walk home from Curtis to the Carson Mall, and then from the Carson Mall to my pop's office, because he owned his own business. And I would just be in the office for hours and hours until it was time to go home. And then I would go home and be in front of a computer for hours and hours after I finished my homework, maybe watch a Laker game if I wasn't on punishment. And then I'd start the whole thing again. So most of my friendships at that time was either at school or very, very rarely on the weekends. So I spent a lot of time with TV. Yeah, I spent a lot of time with TV.
That was your I want to call it escape, right? But would it be more of like a, what would you call it that?
Yeah, I would call it escape.
Oh,
I think it's accurate. I think it's accurate. I think that when you're talking about 90s TV, you're talking about, that's like the pinnacle of escapism, right? You're talking about perfectly. That's why it's so funny to see like Jordan Peele movies where he shows the dark side of these perfectly put together movies and our TV shows and sitcoms. Because I'm like, there's a part of me as a kid, as weird as it sounds, I would think, you can't always be this perfect. Life can't always, my brother and me, it can't always be this healthy in your household. You deal with some stuff. But that was 90s TV. It was the way that everything was polished. Everything had to be ultra prepared before it went to broadcast. And so that was a little bit of escapism, to where it was like when times got hard financially, when times got hard on whatever level, I knew I could become a nostalgia. Well, now I'm a nostalgiaholic because of it. But it was so weird. I would watch these 90s TV shows, like all that. I would watch like, Doug, and I would feel something emotionally attached to it in a weird way.
Yo.
I don't know if it's the chord progression. I don't know if it's because I was young and just goofy. I don't know what it was. Sure. But I felt a connection with the music, and it would give me goosebumps. Even now, it still gives me goosebumps to talk about it, because that just brought a certain, like when I watch right now, I watch a trailer of Snick at Night. Immediately, I start to like get like that visions of me being in my grandmother's kitchen and taking the ice cream out the freezer and making a milkshake from scratch and putting the milk in there and stirring it up and getting ready for Snick at Night and watching all these shows. But a lot of my time was either there, video games, and man, I spent a lot of time.
And feel free to drink water, man, if you want to.
For sure.
Yeah, because I know
good. I'm
the
like
pipes
going
are
down
going.
memory lane right
All right,
now.
man. I'm just making sure. I was like, it's like I'm
Good. You want to put some whiskey in there?
Maybe. You said a statement here. Two things I want to jump into.
Sure.
Well, three actually. I'm not sure what order it is, but I'm gonna go back up and down. You said your father owned a business. What was in that? What was
So it was insurance adjustment, I believe.
Okay.
It transitioned from insurance adjustment, where I don't know exactly what it was, but I know that there was something where we would go on location, and whenever there was an accident, I don't know if the insurance reported to him, but we basically went to the location of the accidents. We'd be driving all over Southern Cali, and he would measure like the roads or whatever, and then he would come back and report it in his car, and then I'd just be in the Camry just sweating and like, I don't know what's going on here, but this Earth, Wind, and Fire playing sounds amazing, so I'm just gonna lay down here. But so he did that, and then he ended up actually transitioning from that, because not only did he go out there and do the measuring, he took photos of the scenes of the accident. So it had to be something insurance related. And then he actually opened up his own photo lab right after the riots popped off in Compton.
Oof.
So he opened up his own photo lab, and there was
Oh my gosh,
a lot of crazy memories there.
And you were involved. You were pretty much along. He was bringing you along the ride to show you all this.
I was there for every step of the way. Like it's part of the reason why I'm such like a nerd out so much with computers, is because he would find ways. I don't care where we're at. He would find ways to teach me something. Right? He wanted to make sure my brain was always working, always in motion, always kind of like weighing things. And it was always this weird balance of thinking and really great music in the background.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I know this is my problem. I know it's my problem.
You're not interrupting. You
I'm sorry, my bad.
I feel like you're an investigative reporter. You figured some things out.
Dude, one of the things that you keep bringing up, man, and just keep bringing it up, and I'm just gonna continue doing this stuff. Thing, but it feels like everything throughout your life, there's a music playing in the background. Yes. Every single time something's going on.
I can't help that.
It's so interesting.
I hear Mary J. Blige. You remind me. Like I can't see a scene without hearing the music. No. I hear you remind me oh my gosh, I'm hearing it. You remind me. It's gonna bother me, but it was definitely old school Mary J. Blige.
Yo.
And I'm thinking of him giving me lessons in terms of these are the parts of a computer. Instead of you going to pay for somebody to do this for you, you're gonna learn these things. Because my pops was always very hands-on with his business, very hands-on with his equipment in terms of the photography stuff that he would mess around with, computers, all this stuff. He was always hands-on, and I just would ask questions, and he would tell me things along the way. And so even being in the photo lab, I would do my homework, and then he would teach me how to like run the photo machines and what I can do with that. So I was probably like a little kid in there, snotty-nosed kid, developing somebody's photos or developing my own photos. I was like, what am I? Now I think about it, and I'm like, oh, he was nuts. Because my brain was definitely not ready for that process. At least I thought I was.
You also said when you were watching TV that you would, obviously imagine that you mentioned your stepmother. Is she, does she work as well to kind of the same kind? Or is she more of like at home kind of managing that space?
The earliest memory I have, she always worked, except for when she had my younger sister. And I think there was a time period where she didn't work. So she was at home. And then, my dad was just working, putting in hours. And then I would end up spending time with her.
You said that you were watching TV. I'm sorry, just really interesting here. You said you were watching TV, right? And you would see, whether it be like these perfectly made movies. But you said with my brother.
My Brother and Me was the name of the TV show.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, I'm sorry, am I missing something?
No. I'm like, you got me real confused.
Sorry. I was like, whoa, this is...
No, you're good. That's my fault.
No, it's not your fault. No,
it's My Brother and Me. There was a collection of Nickelodeon shows that, representation is important, and you didn't really see like many black kids on TV like you do now, right? You see full-blown movies. I just didn't see kids that looked like me. So that was the one show where it wasn't just one or two characters and all that. It was like this entire show shows black dad in the household, black mother. It shows like their sisters and their brother and their friend Goo. And it was just like, this is dope. This is dope to see that dynamic. And I definitely spent a lot of time watching that, and just a lot of the shows that popped up. Clarissa Explains It All. Freaking, of course, Ren and Stimpy, and oh my goodness.
Is this a little bit of like, you wish you were them?
I think this was probably an escape for me during that confusing stage that I talked to you about.
Especially going into middle school at this.
Especially middle school.
Now, what is going on here?
So, what I'd come to realize later on is that because I spent so much time around adults, I didn't really relate to kids my age. There were conversations that I had that were way further than my age group was probably having, or at least I assumed that they had. So when I talked to kids about things they were into, Dragon Ball Z, I didn't have anything for them. It really wasn't my upbringing. Like I love my Nickelodeon shows, but so much was happening in real life that kind of sped up my childhood a bit. And when I would get around other kids, it was like, I can relate to you because we're kids, but I'm going to say something eventually. I remember I told a girl, I was like, I didn't know any better because I was there was a song my pops would play, and it was like something like yearning for your love. And I told her, I said, girl, I'm yearning for you. She said, ugh. And I was like, that does sound crazy, huh? I didn't know. I was brought up by 70s music and 80s cameo confunction, and I was talking like the music that I was hearing or the conversations that I heard amongst my elders.
And these TV shows are made by older people too.
Yes. So the scripts, even the cliche moments, they're made from the perspective of an adult imagining what a conversation between kids is. So here I am. Here I am.
Eating it up. Eating it up.
Here I am.
So how's school life then? Are you getting any solitude, any safe? Is that like a safe?
No, hell no. Hell no. There were, when I saw how different I was from my peers, I stopped speaking for myself. I stopped speaking up for myself. I felt like everything I was saying was being judged. My accent was being judged. What I looked like and how much it didn't add up with what I sounded like was being judged. When I would, like I told you earlier, when I would like talk to girls my age and they were like, no, I don't like you, I like him. And it was like he was the complete opposite of what I was. It's a lot of insecurity that started to build in that point in time. I don't blame them because we're just kids, but at that time, a lot of insecurity started to get built. And so I did see solace in the TV shows. I love seeing Doug go after Patty Mayonnaise because I'm like, man, must be nice. Must be nice there, Dougie. But I would try to play those out and it just wouldn't be the same. Like it wouldn't be the same because, you know, once again, you're talking about, now that I look back, a lot of kids who their idea of a healthy household is completely, like for them, they looked at me like, oh, your dad's in your life. And it got to the point where, so my dad's in my life. We can't relate on that level. Also, my dad made sure that I never, like, he was very much about, when you go outside, you don't represent just yourself. You represent your people and your race. Don't go out there embarrassing nobody. So there was a lot of, like, my vocabulary at the time was way beyond, which in most school situations would be freaking amazing. That means that you're going to excel. Cool kids didn't excel back then. At least by that society's, that circle standards.
This is Carson, Long Beach, South Central after the riots. Like, I just think people don't really just want to put that into context.
And don't get it twisted. Like, it wasn't like my dad was a square neither. Like, my dad was someone who it's a very interesting, like, cause I think back, like, now he doesn't listen to hip hop, but I remember him picking me up and dropping me off to school one time or a few times, and he's playing NWA, and I'm just like, NWA, Couldn't Function, Earth, Wind and Fire, Ice Cube. I remember one time I went through my mother's, because my mother, we'll get into that. She's the majority of my music background. I went through her cassette tapes. I saw gospel, Fred Hammond. I saw Kirk Franklin, and then I saw Scarface. I picked that Scarface tape. I said, Mom, what's this? She said, I like the pianos on it. I said, I bet you do. I bet you do. So like they both are whatever somebody thinks by hearing me describe them, that's on, I mean, just like anybody. It's so many layers to it. And that's something that even now as an adult, I'm very like intrigued by, is unlayering beyond what stereotypes my brain tries to attach to. Oh, you're that type of person, or you're this type of person. I want to unlayer and see, like, I never would have thought that this was a part of your story. And so I am the poster child of that. Like, from my parents to who I am is like the epitome of not judging a book by its cover, because you're gonna miss the best part.
So are you in the same middle school the entire time?
I believe so. Yeah, Curtis Middle School. I had to be. Well, yeah, because I went from, so it's mostly in Carson. So this is a time period where a long stretch of time I did stay with my mom.
Oh, okay.
So this is with my mom. My mom is in Carson. My dad, I believe, is living in Long Beach, or he's going back and forth from Carson. But I stayed with my mom only because of how close it was to the school, and I was walking distance. So, I spent a lot of time kind of just going back and forth there. But there was a break at some point in time. I want to say it was either 7th or 8th grade where I started walking to my dad's office and then staying with him. Usually I would go stay with my dad whenever I was acting up, because my mom was a lot easier for me to just like get away with stuff. And she was like, oh, you want to start acting up? Guess what? You're going to your dad's. So, oh, man, I can't watch Nick and Night over there. I can't watch my brother and me over there.
Your relationship with girls,
You mentioned that you and your sister was kind of dang. It was you guys had this kind of petty thing going on.
Yeah.
The relationship with your mother was at least you felt like your relationship with your grandmother is good. But your relationship with your stepmother and then your grandmother from your mother's side were the best. And the school, it felt like you were trying. What was your relationship with love?
Confused again. Trying to figure out. I mean, at that point, I remember the first time I told my dad, like, oh man, I told this girl that I liked her and she said she liked me too. And he was like, boy, you too young for all that. And he was immediately shut down. And I was like, all right, not bringing that up again. This is a middle school, mind you, right? I was like, I'm never bringing that up again. Thought I could have a conversation about that. He was like, nope. He was like, boy, you too young for that. Folk, you keep your head in those books. All right, Pops. So that was on that end of it. But actually in person, man, for a long stretch of time, especially elementary, middle school, I was just like, oh my God, I was wet behind the ears. I was like Google-eyed over like, oh my God, this is my new, like I'd romanticize like, oh my gosh, I'm going to, go get her some roses if I had the money for some roses, and I'm going to write her poems. And it was just like,
That's rough.
Don't nobody want that. Like, that was kind of the thing. But it's funny. I remember my first crush, Shalina. Shout out to Shalina. Ironically, after I told you that story about my pops, I believe my pops, this is like elementary school. I believe my pops took me to go get roses at a 7-Eleven. And there was a magazine. I forget the name of the magazine, but it used to have like cartoon characters on it. It was like a kid's TV guide almost. And I got her that. And guess what? He don't know this. He don't even know this. I was so scared to go give it to her. I just gave it to the teacher's aide.
Yo.
Because of the fear of rejection.
Yo.
My first crush. I gave it to the teacher's aide, and she was like, oh my God, that's so amazing. I never forget the look on Shalina's face. She was like, is that what we're doing? I was like, you would have wanted that? That's when I learned a valuable lesson too about the law of detachment. But no, just to kind of give a zoomed out point of view, it wasn't the best of relationships, and it wasn't because like I rejected it. It was that I didn't understand the nature of young women, of girls, of women in general. All I know is I had so much amazing respect for my mom. I could never disrespect a woman. And unfortunately, like I said, them coming from a lot of different types of households, you were looked at almost as a simp.
Yeah.
Or as a punk.
They want a thug.
They wanted the tough guy, right? So that wasn't me. That wasn't me at all. And then I was kind of quiet too, a little soft-spoken. It was almost to the point where they felt sorry for me at times. My pants were flooded a little bit, and I just didn't talk. I would just kind of observe, and I would see the guys who did well, and I was like, I don't know if I could ever bring myself, even at that age, like I don't know if I have that in me to do that. But it wasn't until high school that really kind of started to make a shift. Most of that, though, when I look back, had to do with a lack of self-confidence in myself.
The insecurities that you were fighting.
So much of it had to do with that, because hindsight is 20/20, right? In the moment, you think that, oh, they don't like me, they don't, da-da-da-da. But then I started thinking about some of the things I said. It was really weird for a middle schooler to say.
Sure.
I could have wanted them to react a different way, but they're kids. But now that I look back and I'm like, so much of the work, the hard work to, first of all, love myself. How can I know what love is if I don't love myself?
Yo.
So much of the hard work had to be done. Puberty helped.
Hey.
I went from, hey, how you doing? What's going on? You sound different, Dwan. I know. Puberty. So much of that helped for sure. But yeah, early on, man, it was weird. Later on it would get a little bit better. But it's funny because I recently saw something in the book that said, you know what you and all your bad relationships have in common? You. That's the same face I made. So, a lot of soul searching will kind of make you look at these stories in a much different way. There was a point where that was my heart on my sleeve. Oh, they did me so dirty. They were so mean to me. No, I was just understanding what it's like to love yourself and to find confidence in your voice, find confidence in who you are, and you'll see the outside world shift with it.
Is that why you took the Curtis name?
Bingo. So Curtis Middle School, as I described it for you, was a time of huge insecurities. I didn't want to speak in front of people. I didn't like being in the center of attention. When your grandparents bring you in a room and say, do that little dance you did. No, Grandma, I don't want to do that dance. That was me. As crazy as it sounds now, because I literally live in front of a camera now. But that was so much of my story. And it wasn't until I left Curtis, graduated, and something happened during that summer before high school. And then also knowing that I was going to have the opportunity to rebrand, redefine, spend some time. And then, what's crazy about it, and so much, I send so much love to her, because as adults, we're friends. But another one of my biggest crushes growing up, shout out to Daisy. She was very much important during that summertime, because that was the one that was the patty mayonnaise to my Doug. I was like, man, I don't care about none of these other girls. If she like your boy, I'd never forget. That same grandfather that I told you was quiet and very soft-spoken was the loudest I ever heard him got. Whenever I went up to San Diego and I ran his phone bill up talking to Daisy on that phone, I was simping. I was cupcaking. I was on the phone. I was leaning off the side of the bed. I closed the room. Oh, you get off the phone. And that's back when it was phones that were hooked up into the walls.
Yo.
This ain't no cell phone calls. This is phones in the walls. I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to see you neither. How was your summer? I think I ran up a $96 phone bill.
Oof.
It's all in Cali. But I ran up a $96 phone bill. And that summer was very important to kind of taking this next stage in my life by the horns and saying, you know what, who you are doesn't have to define where you're going. Very important.
I'm going to drop the mic just a little bit more. I like you.
Oh, yeah.
You're getting deeper. Yeah.
No doubt.
I like it. We're getting deeper in the couch now. We know where we're going. Friends?
Friends. Yeah, definitely. Coming up in middle school, I did have a great friend group. Homie John, homie Chris, and a few other names that are escaping me. Those are the ones that have Ray Sean. They've survived the test of time since middle school. That's when I actually started to have really, really solid friendships. Before then, the only friend that I really had that was consistent, moving around everywhere, was a friend of mine named Christopher Richardson. How do I remember that name? Oh my gosh. Why does my brain store stuff like that?
Is that different from Chris?
That's a different Chris.
Okay.
It's way before I met that Chris. But this friend group was really interesting, because for the first time I had friends that did not judge me for speaking eloquently. It was actually cool to be the smart one. And they found a way to balance it between, it was yeah, I'm smart, but you're not going to punk me. Yeah, I'm smart, but I'm also street smart. So being around that group made it feel like, could it possibly be cool to just be me? Didn't have any other examples of that. What other kids talking about yearning for your love? Doesn't exist, especially not on Nickelodeon. But those were the kids that we still, to this day, keep in touch, because we have so many of those things in common. Our inside jokes, our sense of humor. Even the goofy stuff, it's just so many goof. We used to say things like, man, I don't give a fat rat. What does that mean? It was our language, right? Somebody would say something questionable, they'd be like, what a bob? What does that mean? I don't know, but that was our thing. They definitely made that time so much more enjoyable. Probably some of the first truly real friendships in my teenage middle school years. Definitely. And,
You said your high school times. This is the end, almost the end of the road before you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is this now you're kind of coming into your own? Is this where music starting to play a big role? This is where you start, or
almost. So music kind of played a very silent background, right? There were programs. So when I was in middle school and I was having bad grades, my pops would make sure that my punishments were clear and for long periods of time. I never forget. I missed the first game between Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. I'd never forgive him. But I was on punishment. I deserved it. I just overheard Kobe for 3 over Jordan. I'm like, I can't ever see this again. Like, thank God YouTube exists. But there were periods of time where I would spend so much time on my computer, either playing Doom, there's a game called Jazz Ball, there was Solitaire, whatever, just passing the time if I couldn't play video games because I was on punishment. But there was one game in particular I kept going back to called Easy DJ. Easy DJ was like this they had pre-songs loaded up on it, and you could shift between songs like a DJ, and you could add effects to it. You could do stutter effects. You could do like echo effects. And I was like, this is really fun to play with audio sounds. I don't want to make it a career, but this is fun. That was kind of my first introduction, but then I just let it by the wayside. I would start to play games like Parappa the Rapper. That would come a little bit further on, but it wasn't until high school, and I met, still to this day, one of my best friends in the whole world, Keaton. Keaton was very, very important. He was a year older than me, and I never forget the first time I ever hit him up, ever talked to him was about the Lakers, because he had a Laker jersey on. He was in a gym. This was a new school that I was at, so I was at 2 high schools, one in Paramount. Got robbed there. Ooh. My mom's like, "You're going to Downey." Yeah, went to Downey, and Downey is where I met my friend Keaton, and man, we had different upbringings, but we saw the world very, very similar. And I don't know what part you want to get into first, but he was definitely the one that was like, "Man, you ever thought about rapping?" We're both, I think I'm like maybe freshman, and he's sophomore. And he's like, "You ever thought about rapping?" I'm like, "No." He's like,
describe this. Where is this at? Where is this?
I'm living in Rancho.
Oh,
Rancho. Yeah. No, was it? No, it wasn't. I was tripping. That's not Rancho. I am tripping.
Oh, like
why did my brain do that? In Downey. This is Downey.
Okay.
So I'm living in Downey, towards the tail end of Downey. He's living down the street, and we're going to Downey High School. We're taking the bus everywhere to get to where we need to get to in terms of school. This is my best friend. So like, as crazy as it sounds now,
you're on the bus, and he's like, "Yo."
You're not even on the bus.
Oh, okay.
Like, we literally had just left. I never forget, one time at school, I found his poetry book. And, like, he wanted to fight. He was like, give me that bag. Because you don't want to, like, your boy is not the one that's not supposed to find that, right? I'm like, you think you are Tupac? Like, what are you doing? You gonna rose that group from concrete? I didn't do that because he was very, like, angry about it. But, like, he's writing poetry. He didn't know that I wrote poetry too, every once in a while. Not as often as he did, but every once in a while I wrote poetry. And I was like, "Bro, you write poetry?" He's like, "Man, give me that." It's like, "It ain't poems. They're stories that rhyme," or something like that, right? And so we kind of talked about it. I was like, "Man, one of the first poems I ever wrote was to a girl named Daisy, one I mentioned earlier." And he was like, "Oh, that's crazy." And I think it set in with him. One of our regimens was, when we went home, like, he would call my phone or I call his phone, and he'd tell me, like, what happened during the day. Like, "Oh, did you see old girl? She was bad." Like, we just have that kind of conversation. This is no AIM. This is no social media. This is like, grab the phone and call your friend. And he was like, "Man, that's going to sound like a weird question. You ever thought about rapping?" I was like, "No." In the back of my mind, I was like, "Yeah, I would love to do that." And he was like, "How about this, bro? 30 minutes. You write the first thing that comes to your mind, and then I'll write something, and then we'll share it." And I was like, 30 minutes? I I was like, I've never done this before. But all right, cool. Did it. It was terrible. It was terrible. I was rapping about things like, of course, Nickelodeon related, and Blue's Clues, and like, I'll leave your body pieces missing like Blue's Clues. It was just a weird mixture of like the things I was listening to: Busta Rhymes, Eminem, Tupac, Outkast. I was trying to make it all make sense, and it didn't. But I did my verse, and he was like, "Okay, that's pretty cool." He did his, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're made for this." But yeah, that was the first time I ever thought about the idea of making music. Still wasn't serious about it. And then he incorporated us recording at his house. He lived his apartment. He lived at his apartment in Downey with his grandmother and his 2 younger sisters and his pops. And his pops, swole dude. He was a Crip, swole dude. He was a man. He wasn't a man of many words, but like when he came in, we shut up. And so he had a boombox, and I guess he gave it to his son. And Keaton was like, "I think we can record on this." And I was like, "You want to actually like for real rap?" He was like, "I think so." And it was like this karaoke big boom by like early 2000s, late 90s thing. And he laid it out there. I think the only instrumental I had at the time was Art of Noise, Moments in Love. Boom, 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 boom. I was like, yeah, this is gonna have to do. And so we rapped over it, and it became addicting. It became addicting because hearing myself back, I never thought I would have liked my voice. I've heard my voice in many different ways. Like I did, by this time I had already done a little bit of public speaking classes. There were situations that caused for me to hear my voice. Like I even had like little goofy videos I shot as a kid. But this is the first time I heard my voice and I didn't hate it. He plays it and I'm like, play it again. Mind you, this is on cassette. So you got to. I was like, hey man, I think I don't hate it. And played it again. And then it was my job to go find more beats off of Napster or BearShare or LimeWire.
Yo.
And I searched for everything I could, and all I could find was Wu-Tang Cream.
Yeah. Cream.
I found...
It's a banger right there.
Man, I found 50 Cent. It might have been like a 50 Cent. I don't want to say it was in the club, but it was like some 50 Cent mixtape stuff. I just found whatever was at my disposal. There was a producer named JC Beats. I'll never forget. He was somebody else who was also there. There was a website called mp3.com. And so I was using all of these resources that I used to get clowned for, now became an asset. Oh, you know your way around computers, right? Maybe you can build like a makeshift studio. So all these things that I used to think made me like this nerd and, oh, you'll never be able to do anything with that. You'll never get no girls with that. Now all of a sudden it was becoming like, oh my God, I feel like Mario with the star. Because everything that I was making this dream more real. And
your father had literally been guiding you through most of, I mean, I don't want to say most of it.
Yeah.
He was showing you at a young age of like, hey, you finished your homework? All right, cool. Let me show you this.
Definitely.
And it's just getting your hands on these things often.
Maybe he didn't think it was gonna be for music though. I don't think there was a part of him ever thought it was gonna be music, because he wasn't really, you know, they talk about right brain thinkers and left brain thinkers and analytical versus artistic. He's very analytical, very supremely analytical. So the idea that he has a son, I'm 38 now. My pops is still in amazement that, like, where do you grab these stories? Where do you grab this inspiration? How do you paint these pictures? What are these sounds? You call them one shots. How do you put these together? But it took a long time before, one, he took it serious, and two, that he understood that this was my journey to live. Because my pops, you know, we didn't talk about that, but my pops has a doctorate. My pops is a professor. He got his doctorate, I believe, from USC. Pops is a serious deal. And even as I was coming up, there was a period of time, I want to say in middle school, where he became a math teacher. And math was my worst subject. So imagine the anger he had. So I think thought that I was going to go more so towards a more scholastic, more collegiate route, and that was just not what I saw in my mind. But he did, in a lot of ways, both my parents did, lead me into what it became. Because now, look, my father is still a teacher to this day. He just got a huge promotion. I forget the exact position he's in now, where I believe it's either, I want to say, I don't want to get the wrong title, but
sure.
Yeah, he's in a very powerful position, and he's full circle. He's gone from like, I don't think I like you and the idea of music, to, do you want to come into my class and speak to them about how you put these lyrics together? How do you formulate these ideas? What are your how do the ideas come to artists? So now I'm in that space.
You were at once in school being bullied and being the one, I don't want to say bullied, but being kind of like, I don't want to say ostracized either. I can't find the right term.
No, ostracized is the right word. Okay, in a lot of ways, 'cause I had to find my tribe.
And then now being the person, like, when they say that movie, right, where the nerds, you know what I'm talking about, the nerds take over. I don't know how to explain it, but essentially, you have essentially became the you have evolved.
Revenge of the Nerds?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's gonna bother me. My 90s.
I was gonna bother me.
Radar.
I could not move on. I was like, dude, my mind is like, no, you could.
Our 80s. Yeah.
Yeah. That's essentially kind of what it feels like. You're like, cool. Even, wow, that's really awesome. Yeah. I'm one of the things I didn't realize so much was that how this was it was like a sudden thing. You going through learning you were being surrounded by this thing. You mentioned it was a silent thing, this music. But once you got to kind of that tail end of high school, right, junior year, senior year, was when you finally got this, right? Was there a feeling like, shoot, I wish I got into this earlier?
Definitely.
When you graduated high school? Because I imagine now you're kind of like, what do I do? Because now you got, you get sucked into something in a whole new world and you're loving it. You're like, oh no. So like, Pops is looking, okay, so what school we going to?
Exactly.
What school we going to?
You hit it right on the head in that there
like,
were so... And then you got to understand too, my Pops being very analytical, he is a thinker and he's able to, like, he was also a psychology major.
Brutal.
So the levels, oh my God, the levels that he could like really make you question what you were going after. I appreciate it now. At the time I was like, you're just being a hater. But now I appreciate it so much because it made me question if this is what I really want to do. 21 years later, I say this is what I really wanted to do because I'm still just as excited about my moments of growth. At the time, though, he would challenge me. He would be like, you don't even rap in your normal speaking voice. All the rappers I know that I came up on, they're telling stories. You don't have a street background. What are you going to rap about? And at that time, you got to think the relevant names are Jay-Z's, like I said, 50 Cent, the Eminems, the Aftermath, like, and his hip hop was classic hip hop that he came up. And most of it was about street stories, street tales. What are you going to rap about? This is pre Kanye West, who I think changed a lot for what is accepted, by society and just hip hop in general. But there was a part of me that was like, I don't know. But I feel like somehow, some way, and this is before internet, really what it was today, there was no social media. I was like, I really feel like there's going to be an opportunity. There's somebody out there has got to have a story very similar to mine. And it's got to be more than just one person. It's got to be. And so I would just keep telling stories. And in the process of me doing these songs, I would reveal things to myself about myself. So as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking of things that I haven't thought about in a minute. I'm like, this really interesting connection. I would do that with the music. So the music became therapy sessions every single time that I sat down. Now, that's what it was when I started off as a writer. I was never supposed to be a producer. I was never supposed to be a producer. I thought I was going to be buying beats the rest of my life. And then my buddy of mine, Keaton,
Shout out to
Keaton.
man.
Keaton said, "Man, I'm tired of rapping over these LimeWire beats." We were trying to put like mixtapes out there, and then we would exchange them with other artists and realize, oh, you got the same internet as me, huh? So we got the same beats. You got the same Wu-Tang Cream beat. You got the same 50 Cent. You know JC beats too. That's crazy. How can we be more unique? How can we stand out? Because we were a duo at the time. We went by Soldier Camp with a J.
What time period are we talking about here?
Sheesh. We're talking about...
literally and figuratively. So, I mean, what year and or like 2 years after high school, or, you know what I mean?
No, this is like last year of high school. Okay. For me, for him was 2002. For me, it was 2003. So I'd say an area of time between 2001 to 2002 was when we really started kind of like establishing what our work ethic would be for the rest of our lives. I didn't know that. I just thought that we were just going to his grandmother's apartment and trying our best not to yell our lyrics, especially because we was cussing. His grandma would cuss a lot. Rest in peace. I love her to death. But we would be like, Soldier Camp. We trying to like not be too loud so she can hear us, because she would turn her TV down to figure out what we talking about. But yeah, I would say that I was about 16, 17. He was, of course, 18, 19. And so this stretch from when it was his last year of high school. So I guess I didn't meet him then. I guess it would have been my sophomore that I meet him, and he was a junior. And yeah, that's what it was. And then when I was a junior, he was a senior. So I'm sorry, it's a long answer, but I'm trying to think of it out loud. 2001 to 2002 for sure.
I think I get the point though, for sure.
Yeah.
So you guys are a duo already starting to pass mixtapes? Holy cow.
He didn't want to.
Oh.
I wanted to get it out there. And I had a CD burner. He was like, we're not ready. Mind you, we went from his Pop's boombox to he made an investment in a karaoke machine that had 2 tape decks. And the tape decks, the purpose of those was you would have the instrumental on one tape, and you had another tape that would record the instrumental and whatever input came into that karaoke machine. You take that new audio that you printed onto that cassette, you switch them around and re-record over the other tape. So it was like degenerating every time we did that. And then by the time we switched it over 4 or 5 times, like we had to deliver, like you had to deliver your verse.
It had to be on point.
It had to be on point. Or we're rewinding and having to record. And every time you do that, quality drops off just a little bit more. The kids call it lo-fi now. Back then it was called a pain in my ass. But that's how we had to do it. So this karaoke machine, he would go back and forth, rewind, go back and forth. Okay, do we need to add dub vocals? Do we need to add layers? Yeah, we do. Go back. And then by the time we had that last tape, that was the one we had. I figured out a way, because of that computer background.
Whoa.
I had a computer background. I figured out a way to take that cassette, play it through some device I had. I had to be a tape recorder, and just run that aux into the computer, and I just recorded it into this program called Cool Edit Pro by Peter Quistard. And I recorded it, and I heard our audio, and once it's on the computer, I can burn now. Got a CDR, and I was like, this is our first song. He was like, you put it on CD? I said, yeah, I did. And I found myself like, we should show people. Like we got so excited by hearing it. We were listening to it back and forth. I got my first car, I think, after he graduated. I got my first car 2003. I'm driving around my pop's old Ford Taurus. I'm playing the music that we're listening to. I'm like, man, that sounds good. We should pass it around. He's like, hold it there. It's not ready. I said, forget that. I just start burning them and just sharing them with people. And I don't know if those are coasters today.
Yo.
But the reality of it is, that's when I knew I wanted a career in this. I was like, the feeling that I get hearing this back is already amazing, but it's not enough. The feeling I got, the nerves that went inside my soul when I watched somebody listen to it for the first time, and then I got new ears by listening to it with them. I was like, oh my God, I didn't hear that before. Now I overhear. Now it went from being 720p to 4K real quick. Now I'm listening. those new ears just made me, it gave me a feeling I could not explain. The only thing closest to it that I think I had experienced in my lifetime was watching them little Nickelodeon shows. This was me now creating.
It's almost like trying to find perfection.
Trying to find perfection, but then also too recognizing very early you're not going to get it, but that's the journey.
That's the journey. Yeah, for sure.
The worthwhile journey.
For sure.
Even to this day, I told you before I came here today, I did a live stream. And in this live stream, I'll make a beat and record hook, verse, ad-libs, all that stuff from scratch in a 4-hour stream. And then I feel like I can breathe now. Now I can do all the other tedious work that it requires to be Curtis King. That was the earliest version of that, where it's like something about this feels alive. And I have to continue to do this because in the same way that you talk about your passion for recording life stories, I think about stories that won't ever quite be the same. I see it as I'm explaining it to you if you don't capture it in the moment. And we got so many little recorders that we got from thrift stores and Radio Shack. Shout out to Radio Shack. That's where I got my first mic. When I will get to that, but shout out to Radio Shack because those were the devices we had to use. There wasn't just pull out a voice memo and just get your vocals off. It was really like I have to hold this brick with me and record these ideas as they come to me. I'm very grateful for that because it gives me the same way, because I never really got into hardware as a producer or an artist. I just was like, I'm going to use what I have and maximize it to its fullest capability and to the limited budget that I have because I didn't really have jobs.
You're so resourceful.
Have to.
It's an interesting world you're in.
Yeah.
Everyone has all these tools and it feels as if they don't have, oh man, I don't have the ability. Like you.
I hear it every day.
You don't have had absolutely nothing.
Like when a kid, when a kid comes to me, when a young producer comes to me and says, Curtis, there's a plugin called Omnisphere that producers know all about. It has over 14,000 presets. They come to me with a straight face and say, is it worth my money to buy it? There's a part of me that dies inside because I'm like, during those times with Keaton, the story I didn't get into, and I'm pretty sure we're going to get into that. The first beat that I made was on a PlayStation on a game called MTV Music Generator. So to look at it had its own.
Okay, no, play that. Run that.
Let's run that back. Okay,
so how did that happen?
So I was getting to that. So there was a part where Keaton was like, "Yo, fam, I'm tired of rapping over these beats, man." Like, and I'm with him. I'm like, we don't sound unique to anybody else out here, but we're not producers. I think we had a producer that we went to. And we asked him, like, man, how much are your beats? And he was like, 500 for non-exclusive. I'm like, we're in high school, buddy. I don't know where you're gonna get that money from. Our parents for sure not paying that. We don't got that kind of money. And that's when I learned very early. Okay, we're either gonna be rapping on mixtape beats, is what they were called at the time, other people's beats, or we're gonna have to figure out like some finances, whatever the case may be, or one of us is gonna have to be a producer. Still didn't fully commit to it until one time after a Christmas break. Keaton got money from his family. I got money from my family. And we just decided one day to go to this place in the mall, in the Downey Mall, called Electronic Boutique. Look for it now. It probably doesn't exist except for like an Idaho.
What was the music playing in the background? I'm just kidding.
No, that one... It was probably like some like house music or something that was in Downey Mall. But I kid you not, man, we went into Electronic Boutique because we wanted to buy, I think it was NBA 2K2 or 3. I think it was NBA 2K3. He had a Dreamcast. So I was going to put my money, half of my money. He's going to put half of his money. And we were going to buy this Dreamcast game and like talk about rapping instead of rapping. And as he was like testing it out on the Dreamcast they had at the game system in-house, I went over to this used video game section because I had a PlayStation. And I'm just looking. I'm like, maybe I can find Tomb Raider or something. And then I see this huge blue double disc. And I'm like, that's weird. And I peeled it back and it said MTV at the top of it. This is interesting. MTV. It's music television. Okay. I pull it up and it says MTV Music Generator. I turn it around. All I see are the colors first of blocks. Then it says, create your own music. I said, Keaton. hey, Keaton. Look, bro. I want to play NBA 2K3 just as bad as you do. Allen Iverson's on the cover. And we used to like idolize him coming up. But bro, this might be something. And he looked at me. He looked at the money. He was like, "That's what you want to do?" I said, "I don't know, but I think so." He's like, "How about we sleep on it?" Keaton was wise beyond his years. Slept on it. Next day, I said, "This is exactly what I want to do." Went back to Electronic Boutique, bought the game.
What is this, man? This is wild.
Went back, bought the game. And for the first night, he was like, "All right, only thing is, I was looking forward to that 2K. So I'm going to take this game the first night." I was like, "No worries. I'm not in a rush because I'm not the producer in the group." My mind is like, I'm not the producer in the group. There's no way I'm the producer. I'm the tech guy that can rap. Whatever. He hit me up the next day on the bus and was like, "You take this shit." I said, "What happened?" He said, "It's confusing. This is stupid." I said, "All right, I'll figure it out." I took it home. And I remember reading a little bit of the manual. I was an impatient kid, so I read a little bit of it just to get started. I sat there and kind of put together what would be my first beat. And I was like, I'm just hooked enough to keep going. I'm not any good,
sure,
but I'm just hooked enough to keep going. And I'm like, before I know it, oh man, I got to take a shower. I got to go to school in the morning. All day, it's all I thought about. I could not focus. I just looked at the clock the whole day. I need to get back home to this PlayStation game. There's something here. And this is when I started to fall in love with a lot of instruments that I use today. Choirs, pianos, synthesizer pads. It was mostly like house music. It was mostly like EDM with a little bit of slivet of like hip hop sounds. And I would just mix all these things together because it was all I had. It was these presets, these pre-made sounds. I started putting them together, and I was like, I think I made my first beat. I put it on CD, right? And I take it over to Keaton's. Or actually, I might have put it on a memory card, I think. I put it on a memory card, I took it over to Keaton's, and I played it because he had a PlayStation 2. And he was like, he's eating a frozen burrito. He was like, "It's cool. Where the bass at?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." The beat had no bass. It was a bunch of like weird vocals. I have it unlisted on my YouTube, but I had a bunch of weird vocals all over the place. I was really trying to figure it out, but I just know like, dog, there's something here. And he was like, "Man, just keep at it, bro. Keep at it. I think you kind of you better at this than I am." And my learning curve is really quick with it. I think the biggest lessons I had to learn was what not to do. How to get out of the way of myself as an artist. Because there were certain sounds that sounded good in the moment, like, oh, we're making a beat. And then when you're rapping over it, it's like, this is annoying. But that was my first introduction to becoming the producer of the group, and I haven't stopped 21 years later.
A PlayStation, MTV music creator became the catalyst to be able to jumpstart essentially a legacy and a career. I'm curious. One of the things I'm really curious about is now that you kind of see the path, right? I imagine you don't want to let your rapping go, but this has to be funded. Are you starting to sell your beats to other? Because you said the group.
No.
You said the group here, so I'm curious on I know it's you and you said it's
Keaton.
Yeah.
Shout out to Keaton because he rapped over some horrendous beats in the journey of me finding myself or finding a sound, and I was messing around with the PlayStation game, and I was getting better at it. But it still just didn't sound like it was right. There was a period of time where I talk about burning it to CD. There was a period of time I couldn't even do that. I had to literally take a Radio Shack headset microphone. That's all I could afford with the money that I had. Headset microphone, put it up to the TV and hope that nobody walked in the room so I can get a clean recording. Wait, turn the volume all the way up. Cool. Record on the computer. It's done. That was my process earlier. Found out you can't get bass that way because those old Zenith TVs don't cover. They don't give you bass. All right, cool. I have to learn how to install. Coming back to the computer stuff, I had to learn how to install this sound card in my computer from Fry's that you can put the RCA cables in. Who else would be able to do that except for the kid who grew up thinking it was, not the cool thing to know about computers? Now it's to my advantage. So I'm putting that in there, and Kirk Keaton's like, it's sounding better. But it wasn't until, ironically, the friend I mentioned earlier that was a part of that group of Curtis friends, John came back into the picture because I ended up actually, my pops wasn't having it with the music. My pops was like, yo, you either got to get a job or you got to go to college. Because at this time, I'm like, cool, high school graduation, it's time for rapping time. I'm about to be a full-blown rapper before social media. I'm like, let's get it. He's like, no, you need to figure out how to generate income. And not just that, but you need to be in somebody's college, either or. I need you to figure out one of those. Because I was at a crossroads. I was like, what does college have for me? Mind you, this is 2003. This is college dropout time. What a great timing for that.
Kanye, bro.
Kanye had me over here rethinking like, yeah, I'm not going to give my money to the man. That was terrible timing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I heard a Rap City interview where he was like, I'm not telling you not to go to college. I'm telling you to get everything that you can out of it and don't let them take advantage of you and put you in debt for a career that you don't want to have. When I understood that, it made me look different. But at the same time, I was like, I'm not trying to go to college. I'd rather find a job. Ironically, my pops was like, you got to figure this out ASAP. I was like, I'm going to my mama's house.
Mom's was gonna ask.
Yep, mom's was living in Carson at the time, ironically. She's living in Carson. And I said, Mama, can I come stay with you? I just graduated. I'm going to find a job, I promise. I just, Pops was giving me all kind of pressure. I'm just trying to figure this out. You understand the music. My mom is the one that bought me my first sound card, my first sound interface. She's the first one that bought me my first omnidirectional microphone. If anybody got it, she would. Mom's had me come over. I went over and I started visiting her because I was starting to drive now. So my pops gave me a car and I just left. I said, Pops, man, it was a hard conversation, but I told my mom, so I was like, Mom, I promise I'm gonna get a job. I'm gonna do all these things, but I really want to do this music, and I just don't have a space to do it. And she was living with my grandparents at the time. It was their house in Carson, and I moved all my stuff over there. And with me moving back to Carson, all those Carson friends I can now get back a hold of. One of those was John. Over the years, John had learned to play the piano, classically trained. So we were already kicking it because it was like, that's my boy and I haven't seen you. And he was like, you doing music? And I was like, yeah. He was like, all right, cool. Well, we should do something together. First thing we ever made, I was still on MTV Generator. First thing we ever, actually, I went from MTV Generator to the Roland Phantom. My mom bought a Roland Phantom because one thing about my mom, she's been playing the piano for 30 plus years. She's always been in the church. She's always
gospel music,
right? So she's always had like musical instruments around. Even my grandparents.
She even said it. The Scarface. She liked it for the piano.
She liked it for the piano, supposedly. I know she liked that Scarface lyrics. I know she did. She liked the hip hop. But at that stage, like music was so much a part of her life. She's played at I don't know how many churches in LA and been the choir director or just led the music. So with that said, I go over there and my grandparents have a back patio. It was mostly used for storage. I looked at that and said, this is gonna be my new safe haven to make music. It was thinnest walls you can think of. When it was 80 degrees outside, it was 84 inside.
That equipment.
When it was 40 degrees outside in Carson, the very rare times, I could see the smoke from my breath go out. But I stayed out there. I bought a floor heater one time. But eventually, I ended up getting a job at Quiznos, and John was the one that got me the job at Quiznos. So God bless John. I got a job at Quiznos, and I was like, cool. I got one of it taken care of. Got the job. I'm going to have some money. Man, them first few checks.
Yeah, this is not.
I started going crazy. I was buying stuff. I didn't know what I was buying. I was going to Guitar Center and letting them lead the way, and that was a terrible decision. But I was buying stuff. I think I couldn't afford these speakers, so I bought my first speakers from Walmart. It's like the surround sound setup. Bought that, brought that to the house. I had this old Dell computer that I had been recording all the stuff with Keaton, and eventually I had a setup, man. I had a microphone that I got from Radio Shack that was like, a little operator microphone, and I had a setup. I had my mic stand. I had my computer. I had my PlayStation. I had a TV amongst a bunch of old TVs my grandparents had and a bunch of junk. But, man, I had my space. And so much of my resourcefulness came to life in a way that I never thought. I couldn't afford, even with the Quiznos checks, I could barely kind of afford to do a few things, maybe take an occasional date out. But one thing I could afford to do was take the sounds in the room. I couldn't buy sound effects CDs, but I could take the sounds in the room and make my own sound effects. So if I had a skit where I'm walking, I'd take a shoebox. And that's the kind of creativity that I was around.
Holy shit. Wait, so you're sitting there, you're sitting there like Disney style creating.
Not knowing that's a job.
That's a real career.
It's a weird career. Like Foley? Like what? Foley? What are you talking? I didn't know that was a career. I was just looking in the room and I was like, this is what happens when you give someone young enough, but also old enough to execute. But someone young enough that's like, this is the same place I used to watch these Snicker Night shows. This is the same exact patio that I used to watch these. Now I get to have my own broadcast, my own show. I don't want a TV show, but the show for me is the music. The show for me is the creativity. When I would watch Clarissa Explain It All, when I would watch Doug, I'd watch Doug imagine, like he would have a thought and then the imagination would be like, and it would go to that moment. It's like I got to do that in real time with music. So instead of me saying, damn, Bearshare doesn't have sound effects of like footsteps that doesn't sound corny. What if I just did it myself for a skit? What if instead of trying to find another voice actor to play the woman in a skit, what if I just pitched my voice up? Like that was the kind of playground that I had. And then when John got involved, oh my gosh, John was so amazing on the keys. It was the first time I felt like I was making music and not just pulling sounds together. I made a drum loop on my mom's Rolling Phantom that I ended up bogarting. It was the same Rolling Phantom that you got like the clip sounds on from the Neptunes or like the Drop It Like It's Hot with Snoop sounds. And I made this drum loop and he played these beautiful keys. And we made an instrumental called Faithful as a Metro. She's faithful as a Metro, right? It was the opposite of what that title is. The title is ratchet, but the music was so beautiful. And John played a solo at the end. The first time I made something and I listened to it for hours and hours and hours and after he left. And that's when I knew I was obsessed with sounds. That's when I knew. It's a wrap. I'm going to be a producer. And even you got to think my growth as a producer was moving so quick as opposed to my growth as a rapper. As a rapper, it still took me a long time to write verses. I was still very serious about that. Like that was my number one career, but the production was like, you have a natural talent for this. You have a natural talent for this. Everybody kept saying it, but I didn't see it. I was just like, this is the process everybody goes through. But man, I'm telling you, the more time I spent with it, I was like, it's coming really easy for me to grow with this. And then eventually I became the producer of the group. Then I became a producer. The group split up, me and Keaton. When I moved over to Carson, I just became a producer for a new group called Curtis King. So I told you the origin of my name, and that's true. That's the origin of my name. But initially, me and John were trying to think of a group name because we wanted to be like the Neptunes. So that was one of our biggest influences. And so he was like, all right, we both went to Curtis Middle School together. He went to King Drew Medical Center. Curtis King.
Yo.
So we did a bunch of music together. I got it tatted, and eventually that group broke up, and I was like, oh, I better make a new name for this because it's with me forever.
Right.
So then I was like, you know what? Conquering my insecurity still applies. I'm keeping a name. Yeah, man.
And so one I think it's really cool is, you're, and this is a journey. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't know this, right? Like when you're 18-year-old, 19-year-old,
no, you don't at all.
You don't know this nothing, process, bro. Like, you still got another.
I wish I could slap the back of my head as a young kid. All these visions that I had. Man, I'm gonna get in the industry. I'm gonna be the next Kanye West. Do you know what that means in 2020 and 2021 and 3 and 2? You sure you want that, young Curtis?
Yeah, man.
I had no idea.
Jeez, what Kanye's going through right now?
Man, and I've made content about it where it's like, that's what people, the more that I, like, eventually, of course, we get there, but as I started to do actual industry work, I kept hearing that, man, you're going to be the West Coast Kanye, you're going to be this. And the older I get now as a father and a husband, I'm like, that don't seem like the life, the trajectory of what I set on. That doesn't seem like the ideal life for me. Even the fame doesn't seem like the ideal life for me. I like that I live in a neighborhood now where I get to make music for a few hours, very loudly. Nobody asks any questions.
Get excited.
As long as my grass is cut and the homeowners association don't come after me, everybody's cool. They don't even care what I do. That's so much more peaceful than when I think of, seeing Kanye cuss out the paparazzi at 5 a.m. So young one didn't know any better, man. But I just thought that I was like, man, I want all of this. I want everything that comes with it. But time would reveal itself in some very interesting ways and opportunities that showed me what this is really about. And I figured it out very quickly. Yeah, you need to pivot and figure out something else.
I want to jump a few years.
Yeah.
When did you meet your spouse?
I met my wife about 6 years ago.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you were on this producer journey for a while.
Like at this point, you're talking about I had already gone on tour as a recording artist. I had already got my placements with Kendrick Lamar and Absol and Glasses Malone, Mac 10. I had really already established myself even in my YouTube space where people know me from that space. There's a few different eras of Curtis King when I met her, but I had just came out of a really long-term relationship where I proposed. It was something I proposed that paid dues. So in front of tens of thousands of people. It didn't end up working out. And I was starting life all over again at I don't say mid, but like early 30s. I was by myself for the first time in a long time. And I was in an apartment, a little tiny apartment in Redlands, trying to figure out what's life going to be now. Right. I was part of an independent label called Black Cloud with Noah James and Jinx and all my comrades. And I actually had stepped away from the group as well. So this was the first time that I was by myself. And a DJ, a homie of mine, DJ Disco. Disco was like, man, my friend, she thinks she's cute. I was like, man, I'm just focused on me, just trying to do what she looked like. And he showed me a picture, and I was like, oh, tell her I think she's beautiful as well. Make it happen. And
I like how that southern kind of, it just kind of sneaks right back in.
They call it the macho man voice, but I'm like, that's just the I was like, man, can we make something work?
The grits.
Look, man, it's like it makes it less uncomfortable to talk about these things because it's like
so good.
But she we had met before at Dwan and Lisa used to throw this series, a show called The Common Ground at the Vibe.
Yeah,
and I used to frequent there all the time. I used to be a performer, host, all these things. And I had met her a few times there before, never had talked until I was actually single. And in less than a year, we went from dating to that's the mother of my child. And you're now going to be my wife. I'm going to propose to you. It wasn't supposed to. There were so many things that in my life, I thought it wasn't going to happen. I thought I was going to spend the next few years of my life studying Gary Vee books, Tony Robbins books, and just getting myself ready for whatever stage of my life this was. But ironically, I started working on myself Because I told you that quote earlier that I read in a book that said, all of your relationships that have gone sour, all of your quote unquote bad relationships, they all have one common denominator. It is you. It is you. It is you. And so when I had that revelation and I said, okay, cool, I'll work on myself. I'll really work on myself this time. There's nobody in this house, in this apartment but me, and an empty fridge with an avocado rolling around. Like I was on the couch. I didn't have no cable. I was waiting for the internet. I was like, bad reception, so I can't be on the phone. I really had to stay with my thoughts. And it was the greatest thing that could have happened, because I think that it prepared me. It softened my heart. It prepared me to be ready for my wife. And I met my wife, and she was like the first woman that I was with that didn't have a rock hard, strong surface to her. She was very sensitive. So I would say things and they would affect her in a way where I couldn't joke a certain way. Instead of me being like, well, I can't be myself around her, I was like, no, I like this. It's going to cause me to grow in areas that I need to grow. That might have been the reason why certain relationships went left. Because of my own immaturity, because of my hot-headed manner sometimes. So with her, I talk about it in a song that I have called C'est la vie, that she softened me, man. She softened my heart and prepared me not only to be worthy of being a husband, but also a father. Because ironic thing about my son, he don't respond to the same things that I responded to with my father. Yelling? Nah. He'll look at me like, don't do that. Like, he just cry. He just won't react the same way. So I have to now develop different ways of parenting, different ways of even processing when I'm irritated or angry. Both of them. Greatest, I couldn't even describe the love that I have for them, but they're also my biggest challenge, because it requires me to, in order to step in those shoes and do what I'm supposed to do, I have to become a better man. That's a great deal.
Can I ask a question here?
Sure.
What is the difference between you mastering and perfecting your craft versus you mastering and perfecting yourself? Which one was harder?
That's a great question. That is an awesome question. So what was more challenging, perfecting my craft or perfecting myself? I am from the schooling that they're not disconnected.
Okay.
I think that even if I didn't know, while I was perfecting my craft, the idea of perfecting my craft had so much to do with a level of comfortability living within my skin. So perfecting my craft was less about the hours putting in. That's a part of it. The hours that I put in, the songs that the songs that I'm just adding to the collection. Very little to do with that. It had more so to do with dig deeper so that you can tell more unique stories. Dig deeper so that you can show yourself a level of skill you didn't even know that you had within you. Well, to dig deeper, you can't lie to yourself. To dig deeper, you got to ask some really hard questions. You know, I have to control my irritation when I see somebody jump into rap and it's just a joke to them. I've learned to deal with that. That's boomer energy for me. But I remember delivering verses that literally put me in tears, and I had to stop. But these are my therapy sessions. But also, when you give a young kid therapy sessions and they don't know that these are therapy sessions, you also peel off Band-Aids and you don't have the proper tools to kind of nurture the trauma. You don't have the proper tools to really close the loop. And so there was a lot of wounds that I opened up. And then when I performed the songs, I kept opening them up and I never actually closed them until I decided, you know what, I need to go on a journey. And this came in many forms. I say one of the most impactful events that I've ever gone to this day. Anybody who knows me knows that I am not the same Dwan, not the same Curtis, was the Power Within Tony Robbins event. I've been there 3 times now. It was the most I ever paid for a ticket to go to anything. $700, I think, for like general admission. And my trainer at my gym invited me because he knew that I was really into like the self-help stuff. He was like, man, you want to go to this event? And I was like, I think I do. I was like, but let me see what I can pull together from resources. Now, this is around the time I'm starting to sell beats finally. That was later on down the story, but I went. And something about the amount of information that he was giving that was making so much practical sense was so aligned with where I was at in my life, and I was ready for a change. I was fiending for a change. This was the quest that I was going on, but I didn't have the proper driver, right? Like, God is very much a part of my life and about my journey, but you know, I think that he allows at least some space for us to go through it and not think through it. So I believe he put me in a place where I've been to churches all my life. I've seen people catch the Holy Ghost. I've seen people who are the holiest of the holiest when they're in church and start cussing up a storm when they leave the church. I've seen people who have had their life changed by church. All that. It wasn't until I went to that Tony Robbins event that I understood this is why people clap. This is the feeling that you get when you feel like you're inside a community of people who are all wanting to do better with life. It does something to you that's like you get so much energy inside of you. I'm not going to call it the Holy Ghost, but there's so much energy inside of me that I was like,
you gotta let it out.
It starts to make a lot of sense. Okay. The clapping, I used to be so self-conscious about clapping in church and, you know, making sure that I didn't clap the wrong way because I was very insecure. But when I got in that environment, I was like, I'm around 10,000 people that all want better. Or at least it feels like that. We got workbooks. It's forcing me to talk to people, my strangers on my left and my right. I have to talk to them. Where else have I seen that? Church. Look to your neighbor on your left and then say, how you doing? How you doing? I'm doing that now as an adult, and I'm doing it on my own, you know, by my own decision making. But being in that environment, man, I got into such a zone mentally that I was eating very minimal food for 7 to 8 hour days, just taking lemon water. And this information was so good, man. It got me in a prime state to where I walked on coals, hot coals, fire coals. Didn't think twice about it. I took all that energy for those 3 days, came back home. In a relationship I was in, I was ready to go. There was nothing stopping me. A week later, I released a project called Jubilee Year. It went number 1 on the hip hop iTunes charts. It was the first time, not number 1, number 3 on the hip hop iTunes charts. I shared it out there on Twitter, and Tony Robbins retweeted it. It's one of the greatest times of my life at that point, right? So that was a real turning point for me because he made the connections you're making right now. He didn't have to talk to me to help me make the connections that I made. He would ask questions like, which parent did you strive to get more affection from? Because that's going to shape so much of your decision making in terms of who you choose as a partner, your confidence, all these different things that is linked to. And he sat up there, man, and told so many different things. It's also the reason I went vegan. After that event, I went vegetarian for 10 years. I broke it this year. Shout out to Wingstop. And I went back. I'm back now. But that event, man, was the timing was so on point, and it made so much of the things that I thought made me out of place, things that made me feel like, am I wrong for having these thoughts that I have? I don't think people understand, like, I can only imagine for what it's like from my level of intelligence, but I have friends that are just pure geniuses. I don't know if people even acknowledge how lonely that can be. I know for whatever level that I have, it's lonely to have very specific thoughts and to see things in certain directions. Kanye makes so much sense to me sometimes. especially when he makes no sense at all. Because I'm looking at him like, ooh, you saying the inside voices out loud. I usually keep that in my brain and let it formulate itself until it's ready for it's ready to be it's ready out the oven to be delivered. Right, that pizza's not ready. He'll go spit it out when it's dough. That's Kanye. But I'm recognizing, man, by going to that event, there were so many connections that I made that were like, now that you're giving yourself permission to step into your ultimate power, do something with it. And every decision that I've made, every hard decision, is the first time in my life that I leaned in to every hard decision that comes my way. Confrontation, hard conversation. I am the first one to lead. When we have a situation when the car breaks down, I'm the one that gets my ass out the car, and I'm going to walk to the gas station if it's 12 miles away. Instead of sitting in a car talking and being like, man, well, AAA kid, I don't really have AAA. I'm walking. Because by the time you decide it, I'm going to be there. I had a pastor one time prophesize to me. I came there trying to see about getting an opportunity, a job opportunity for my mom who was in a rough spot. And he said, we're going to talk about that, but I need to talk to you. He said, I see something in you. He said, you're a forerunner. No matter what the terrain, you're going to find a way to maneuver your way through it. And it was prophetic because that's what I gave myself permission to be after that Tony Robbins event. And I haven't stopped since.
Is that what gave you the is that what gave you the, I want to say permission, but the inspiration to write the book?
I'll just say that it wasn't the inspiration, but it was.
Do you mind showing?
Yeah. So I wouldn't even say it's the inspiration. I would say it's. I'm reading a book about, I think it's called Atomic Habit. I think it's what it's called. And it talks about whenever you say you want to lose weight, you should switch that. You don't want to lose weight. You want to be somebody who makes health conscious decisions. It's less about the thing that you want to do. That's going to be a byproduct of who you are. So if you say, I am just someone that is very conscious about what I eat, how much of it I eat, how much exercise I get, it's not a matter of you having imposter syndrome and having to fit into the shoes. It's who you are, even if it's not currently what you have. Right? I heard Master P say something along the lines of, he stopped telling himself he wasn't a millionaire. He said, I just haven't got to my money yet. It's about who you are. And I'm telling you, like, I know for a lot of people, they listen to that and they're like, oh, that sounds like The Secret. That sounds like Law of Attraction. It is not that. Think about you in your most confident moments, when you made your best music, when you made your best beats, or you went into that job that day and you knew you were going to ask for that promotion. And you just knew there was something in the air, something in the way that you hopped out of the bed. It was the speed in which you got through that morning, and you had the undeniable confidence. You almost felt like you were outside of yourself looking at yourself. That kind of confidence, I've been living with that through my lowest moments, through my highest moments. That has been the one common denominator. And I couldn't really put anything to it. I know I'm kind of going on a rant, but I was listening to a spiritual teacher named Muji. And during a really rough time in 2019 for me, I was going for a walk, kind of trying to clear my head. And he said, whenever you have a thought, isn't it odd that you can have a thought that thinks on this side and a thought that thinks on this side about any particular topic? He said, isn't it also odd that you could observe that there's a conversation between two entities from another set of eyes? I'll mess you up because it messed me up. Isn't it odd that you can observe the conversation from these two? We can see that. Who are the eyes looking at them? Talking about mentally, right? And then you have the ability to recognize that that is an entity with eyes. Well, what's looking at that? He calls it the watcher. There's a part of you spiritually. There's a part of you inside of your body. Inside of it's not even about your mind. It's detached from your mind. There's a part in you. If you believe in a soul, there's something, whatever you want to call it. It's a weightlessness. It's a freedom that cannot be denied. It cannot be defined. It's been there. There's a part of you that feels like it's the same thing that's been in there since you were 17, when you were 7, when you're 37, whenever the case may be. There's that within you. Many will define that as the God in you, right? But the acknowledgement of that was so powerful for me because I started to recognize like there is an immovable force, an indestructible force. I can't even touch it. I can't even define the freedom that it is. The more that I'm able to detach myself from titles, I'm not a music producer. I'm not a rapper. I'm not an author, right? I take these titles on when I get an opportunity to do them. The more powerful I feel when I detach myself from those. So when people see me do things that feel like, man, I never would have thought you would have, I can't even think in that way because I've always been that. At 17, it didn't make any sense to make resourcefulness out of this janky computer in this junky room. I know my pops walked in there one time, looked at all the junk and was like, you making music in here? And I'm like, I'm telling you, Pops. Call it delusional, but I see something. Now, like, he walks into a house that's financed by my music to come visit his grandson. Right? And I'm, I don't worry about the flex being my car. I don't worry about the flex being the jewelry, all of that like I said, once again, I'm detached as much as I can be, I should say, at this stage from that. My thing is the biggest flex is like, I knew that I could do this. And regardless if somebody looks at what I do and they look at my numbers, people are so obsessed with numbers and I'm like, you have no idea. I'm the same guy that was spending the night in TDE's studio. I'm that same guy that has all these stories, right? Where I'd take a nap and I wake up and Schoolboy Q is in the studio and everybody else left the studio to go to a Laker game at the Staples Center. And he's like, you want to cook? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to make a beat. And I'm sampling the Beatles for Schoolboy Q and press and record on Ali's computer. It's the same guy. And I think sometimes when I'm thinking forward in what I do, these stories are so personal to me. I know people would use them to flex, but I'm like, everywhere that I went, I was supposed to be. Even when I didn't have the confidence to speak that, there was a part of me that's like, of course you're here. You did the work. All of this wasn't by accident. Now I can own that and say that out loud, which I think, based upon the story that I've told you and all the different, obviously there's so much more to anybody's story. These are all things that if you ever have a moment where you look at any content that I do or you see something happen and you're like, there's something, I cannot explain it. It's more of that than it is anything else that you can put into words. For sure.
Jeez, man.
How's your time? I'm good. I'm here. I'm your guest. I know you had a time limit. I was like, oh, he don't know. He don't know. He gonna start asking me questions about life.
I want to be as respectful to your life as possible because
you're good.
Because
man.
like it's like,
man, but I feel like this is such a good space, a good place.
Okay. Sarah, you okay with this one or no? Okay, all right.
That right there. Welcome to my life. Welcome to my life right there.
You come from two Louisiana parents. You have a mother who was adopted from a grandmother who's a little bit, a little bit hard, but a grandmother and a grandfather from your father's side, right? Who you said, you may be 16, but I'm 61.
Yeah, I was like, you're not 61, grandma, but I'm not gonna say that out loud.
Smart, smooth. He has this way about him. He's forward. He's disciplined, and instilled that to your father. Your father's a PhD, doctorate. He owns businesses, and he brought you along the way. He has a big heart. doesn't know so much how to give affection, but you also had that balance though with your mother.
Yes.
Who was able to give that to you, who was Lulu loose, who showed her emotions on her sleeve, but had that gospel about her, the piano about her, the music that followed you throughout your entire journey, whether it be the soulful Cosby Show, whether it be, when your Malcolm X pops.
Oh man.
You're this confused little kid, like, what in the world am I a part of? Parents that you never really saw together.
Yeah.
But you were able to spend time with him, and the journey through your father, of being able to go and be a part of his businesses and be able to see what he was doing on a day-to-day level, even when it was doing insurance and measuring things, like the hard work that he put in.
Facts.
You being home, be able to have some sense of escape and learn. You were a sportsman and was able to connect with your boy Caden about sports, which we'll get into later.
Caden. Yes, sir.
But you had this sense of like wanting to learn, whether it be like, yo, I'm trying to get these shows, My Brother and Me, I'm not
Brother and Me, Clarissa Explains It All, Doug was so important.
They called you the city boy, right? Your family would see you as,
listen,
every time you would go
boy.
back home, and I know we didn't get to really jump into that, but it's so cool, like you had this middle school side of you.
Right.
Even though in the weekends you like, I'll go outside, you're like, during the week I'm staying home, man. I'm on my computer, I'm in all that, I'm watching my Nick at Night, and yeah, you were able to kind of like find your way to Curtis out in Carson, but didn't like your voice. You didn't like the person that you were. You felt insecure. The girls weren't fucking with you
at all.
Like you yourself, you judged yourself. It was really hard for you to speak to people. You just felt like it was just you on this island. And sure, at the time, it felt as if like, man, everyone around you, doesn't dislike you or whether she performed, right? As you got older, you realize like, you know what, again, that quote that follows you, right? All of your problems, failed relationships has one thing in common, and that thing in common is you. Yo. And as you even connect with friends like John and Chris and Christopher, shout out to Christopher Richardson and Rashad.
So Christopher Richardson, that was the old school friend. I haven't seen him in years. Chris McMullen. Chris, man, shout out to Chris. He's he's another one of them kids. He's the first kid I ever heard that spoke his future into existence in middle school. He said, I'm going to be on TV. And he's on the Aspire network. He's like really good friends with Issa Rae. Like he literally is walking in his truth. And there's been so many times where we've hit checkpoints where I'm like, bro. He's like, bro, I don't know what tomorrow brings, but I'm pushing forward. I'm like, me too, bro. But he's somebody that's an inspiration. He had his own cooking show on Aspire TV owned by Magic Johnson. So like, I'm just, yeah.
It's interesting how you surrounded yourself with people the three people who didn't judge you. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things, that they didn't judge each other. Yeah, you got like, what a bobbit.
Yeah. No, that was us. That was, you know what? That was our way.
I don't give a fat rat.
I don't give a fat, but you know what? That was our way. Like when we, I don't know who recognized they were cool first. It might've been Chris, because he came from parents that were like you gonna be well-rounded, right? I don't know who was first. Shout out to another homie, Jerry. But like, we went from smart is cool to we might be the coolest. Like, we had all of the other kids who were like not the super smart kids saying that slang. So like, whenever a teacher would say something, so our version of pause back then was, what a bob? What a bob? Like, what does that even mean? Like, what a bob? And the teacher would get so irritated, like, oh, don't stop calling me Bob. My name is Peterson. And that was our thing. Like, oh, what a Bob? Why would you say that? And then he would be like, man, I don't give a fat rat. When you own your cool, and this is for anybody out there, I don't care how weird it sounds, the idea of, in your mind, of you being cool as you are, that is the cool. That's the only cool that you could ever be. Because if you got to morph into somebody different and not just a better version of you, you're not cool. And so much that I think this era of time is, if I can find the right filter, if I can find the right composition and a 4K camera, like I'm Himothy. And it's like, that's not how life works. Because at some point in time, you're going to be faced with human beings in front of you at a meet and greet. And they're going to be like, What a Bob.
Mm-hmm. It may not be the same words.
It might not be the same words, but yeah,
know what it means.
And I think that's the one thing that I'm grateful that God put people in my life that didn't allow me to stray. They were interested in the things and the thoughts that I had. Their interest is what made me want to be more of me. Their interest made me feel like if I'm cool to them, then I can be cool to me. And if I'm cool to me, you won't know what I am if you meet me for the first time in high school. I'm that from day one now. So now you about to get all these thoughts that I used to have when I was a quiet, reserved kid. You're about to get all this work now for the next 4 years.
And what I think is one of the things I think is so true to that, what you just said, is Daisy.
Yeah,
just how crazy Daisy that summer, where love was able to pull you out of that kind of insecurity, where you were, you had to step away, go to high school, you're 2 years in, and you meet Caden, and you have this sense of like, you know what, hey man, you ever thought about just this little small comment where he gives you man, let's do it. Let's say 30 minutes, hop on, let's see what you got. And that small moment was a domino effect of you wanting to now master your craft. And then the one thing you hated, your voice, was the one thing you fell in love with. You went even further than that. Like, you go in 2 years a year, maybe out of high school, you got to figure out what you do. Your father is highly educated. He wants you to go down that path. Right? Your mother's a really hard worker. She's like, look, you got to make money. But, your mom, where you only spend 40% of the time, if you want to say that, was like, I'll take you in. Your grandmother let you stay out on the patio to literally build your own setup. Right?
She didn't let me do nothing.
Okay, sorry, my apologies.
She didn't like it at all. Sorry, she didn't like it at all because that was the one that was she was bougie. She look in the patio and be like, little boy, you need to stop doing all that music and get in somebody's books. She was not having it. My grandfather was so hard of hearing, he couldn't hear 808, thank God. But like if she was more able-bodied, she would have broke it down she would have burned it down herself. She was a fire. That's another episode in itself. She was a firecracker. Let me make sure the vision is clear, because if anybody watches this back and they knew. They knew. I'm not even calling Grandma Eunice. If you knew Eunice, you knew that she was with the shits. She was not rocking with that at all. Mom's was the one.
Mom was like holding everything back. Pop's back, Grandma back. Like, look, let him.
She was my shield, man.
Let him be. You shall not pass.
Hold on, and check this out. Because my mom had a history in music, even when she was working graveyard shift, God bless her heart, she would text me, because my 808 woke her up when I finally bought some real studio monitors. She would text me, hey son, could you turn the music down a little bit? Oh, and by the way, the 808 is out of key. Talk to you soon. Love you. That was my mom. Like, man, that was my mom, bro. Like that I understand how rare that is, but she was. I mean, you make the connection. She was in a lot of ways like my shield for a little bit while I can try to figure it out. Because a lot of folks, their story is completely different because they're not given that space ever. They have to go through a lot more dire situations than I went through. I was blessed. I went through some bad things, but I was blessed to be able to have at least her for that moment of time. Because had it not been for her, I wouldn't have got my first checks from Vans. I wouldn't have got into video game sync placements. I wouldn't have got into anything that my dad started to look at music a different way. Like, oh, you can actually make a living at this. Yeah, Pops, I'm telling you. Trust me on this. Not even trust me. Trust your parenting. Do the best you could. Trust your parenting. Don't worry about, I know you're going to be worried about me because I'm your father, I'm your son, but trust your parenting. I'm going to be all right. Because you wouldn't have it no other way. Pops, I got this.
Shout outs to your sister, even though she was a little, a little petty. Shout outs to your little sister, right. Being, the basketballs, being in basketball and that. Even your other sister that you didn't even get to interact with too much because she was with her stepmother, and your brother as well. You built something from literally the ground up with your bare hands, with a little bit of help from Caden. and I'm so sorry I can't find the word. Your friend who plays the piano,
John.
Sorry,
I'm
so sorry for John. John, who helped you be able to help create and build who you are and form your sound and what you were trying to get, what you were trying to become and create.
John is so important because not only did he play the keys, but I didn't know any music theory. Still to this day, I'm very bare bones on music theory. John was the first one to because he had the same kind of upbringing in terms of music, just all over the place. My mama played Wham, my dad would play Earth, Wind and Fire. He was the same thing, so that he would pull up these Prince records that my dad used to play and be like, man, listen to this chord progression here. So the musicality that you hear in my music today, salute to John, because he made me see music in 3D, and I couldn't see it like that before. Everything was just MTV generator, sound, louder. He was like, no, really sit with this, listen to this chord. And I'm like, that's beautiful. It's called a seventh. Oh, that's the Neptunes use. Yes. So John was a huge part of the musicality aspect of what I do today.
And even though the journey, we didn't really touch too much on, of going through the producer life and seeing the ebbs and flows of understanding that craft that you wanted to create. Mm-hmm. It really wasn't complete until your wife really taught you that sense of and I can't remember the word you used, but I think it was that sense of innocence, the sense of of understanding to not be so joking, to understand to be a little bit more softer.
Yeah, not such a smart ass. Even though I'm still a work in progress, but yeah, she softened. That's what it was. She softened a lot of the rigid surface I had to have out of protection. It was safe here, and I had to acknowledge I don't have to be on the defensive. I was on the defensive. I felt like in some relationships I was on the defensive when I was in middle school, for sure. I was on the defensive to make it okay to be me, right? Almost protecting to a certain degree a level of innocence, the younger me, right? The one that still is attached to these stories, the kid in me that's still there, that force that I talked about. You've seen that person, that entity has seen it all. Need to protect that. It doesn't need my help because it's always indestructible, but there's a part of me that feels a responsibility to be real to that, and also recognizing that there's somebody right now that wants to be anything but in their skin. And I'm telling you, that's the coolest shit you'll ever be.
You have a son.
Yes.
And you realize the things that you did, mm-hmm. right? It's not going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And you're here now, looking back at your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any regrets?
None. Without a shadow of a doubt, none.
Jeez, that was quick.
None. So it's funny. You bring up my son. He a few years ago, he showed some signs during the pandemic. We didn't really, to this day, we're still working on his communication. He's 5 now. He's going to be 6 next year. Things about his communication that just didn't add up, right? We were seeing kids his age that just were developing a lot quicker. And just notice little things, like he would shake his hands and whatnot, and just like these different things. He got diagnosed with autism, and even then, there was a voice in my head. Or actually, I watched a therapist that was talking to OT Genesis. It was on YouTube, and he said something along the line, because OT Genesis has a son that has autism, and he said, as a parent, there's a part of you that's like, why us? And the therapist said, why not you? You are the perfect household for your son in his circumstance. My wife works from home. My wife has her own business. She's been able to, when I met her, she's working at Amazon. Since then, that entrepreneur spirit that got in her, watching what I'm doing and showing her whatever I can, she went from doing makeup and getting sponsorships left and right from anybody you can think of, to now she's running, a successful press-on nail customizing business. My son is living in a household where both of his parents are there all day long. One thing they kept telling us whenever we started getting the diagnosis is that he's going to need more attention than the usual kids. And I'm like, it sounds like parenting. One thing about them is, in order for the communication, you guys have to be consistent. That sounds like parenting to me. Give me something new. Well, it's going to be awkward for him to be in situations. It sounds like my life. Who's better equipped to show him that it's cool to be you and navigate in this space? So we were gifted with an opportunity to be parents for Nas. I named him after my favorite rapper. I'm with a wonderful woman that says, yeah, let's name him after your favorite rapper. What? In what world does that even exist? Of course, in this Curtis King world, thank God. But now young Nas is, man, he's the happiest kid that you'll ever see. Very gentle. It's not a mean kid. He got his moments where he have his moments like any other kid. But I'm grateful for that, because to answer your initial question, now looking back at my entire story, I recognize how much of it was leading into every moment that I went to. How much of it was purposeful. It's nothing by accident, right? I used to be so obsessed, and I'm still working on myself, with planning and being strategic and getting things right, until I finally recognized that over planning is the death of execution. Over planning is the death of execution. It's the death of imagination. None of these opportunities that I had to be resourceful happen if I just sit around planning for it to happen. Somebody had to be goofy enough, cheesy enough, all the things they'll call me, cheesy enough, goofy enough, dumb enough. All these things had to happen. I never forget, I read in a book by John C. Maxwell called Failing Forward. And he talks about the stages that everyone must go to in order to become a genius at their craft. He said, you got to go through the stage of being stupid to everybody else because you want to be let's say you want to be a rapper. You want to be a rapper? Yes, I do. Then the next step is you're actually going to be stupid because you don't know any better, right? You're going to learn the hard way. Next, people start looking at you and saying, all right, he might be stupid, but he works really, really hard. All right, that's the next step. You're a hard worker now. They won't even give you any other props. These are years in the process, but eventually you get to, he's a hard worker, but he's been around us long enough to be considered knowledgeable. I'll give him that. He knows. Like now, all of a sudden, the family members that didn't support your music are sending other people to come talk to you about audio. Now, all of a sudden, you're the one doing PowerPoint presentations at the family picnic or whatever the case may be. You're knowledgeable. After knowledgeable, people say, damn it, you're a genius. The only difference is that you stayed. The only thing you did was have the audacity to stick with it. You grew, but growing is a byproduct of just sticking around with it. Understanding that, I recognize that no matter where I'm at, I'm never too fast, never too slow. I'm exactly where I need to be. Everything that is happening, bad, good, traumatic, all happened by design. It had to color my canvas the way that it did, or this story would not be anywhere near as authentic as it is. And I'm grateful for it. For all my flaws, for anything that anybody ever looks at me and says, oh, I don't like him. I have to be that. Or like Redman said, I'll be that. Like I have to be that. Les Brown says that. He says, I got to live what's in me. I have no choice.
Do you mind pulling the mic down?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I like it.
This thing snuck up on me. I'm slumping.
No, you're good. No, let's get there. If you want to pull it deeper, if you like.
Yeah, it's slumping. It's slumping. It's my bad.
You just pull this thing right here.
Right here?
Yeah, and it just, yes, it's much.
There it is. Okay.
So I have a final question.
Sure.
Sorry, I keep saying that, and it's not. So I keep doing this, and so it's a bad habit. It's not my final question. Now that you looked back at your life,
right?
Looking forward, next
few years.
Mm-hmm.
What's the dream? What are you fighting for? What do you want out of life? What's the goal? What do you want to accomplish? Almost essentially, what do you want to? What do you want to leave behind?
So, in the physical form, I want to have a school, a physical brick and mortar school for rappers and music producers who are faced with the same decisions that I had when I left high school. What do I do next? I think the audio engineering schools are cool for a certain sliver of the demographic, but I think they come with a heavy price tag. And I think that even when I was going to these schools, my mom immediately was like, you're not going here. You're not going to get anything out of here. Maybe some relationships, you're not going to get anything here. I want to create a space where my tribe, like when you see this crown and you see the hammer and wrench crossed across each other, we have a tribe called DIYers. That resourcefulness you talk about, that is the foundation of it. We're not a tribe of people who take pride in doing it all. It's not what it's about. It's actually the opposite. It's that if I have to be the one to get it started, I'm always going to do it. I'm always going to do it until I have the resources or the right person comes along. But I'm a self-starter. I'll get it done. I would rather work with other people, but by any means, I'll get it done. So I want to create a DIYers university, physical school, and I want to name it after my pops. Then I want to create a 24-hour vegan restaurant or vegetarian restaurant, and I want to call it Rochelle's after my mom. Those are the ones that make my heart beat real fast. It makes me feel in over my head. I know it's exactly what I should be dreaming about. Those are two things in the physical that I would love to leave behind. That to me would feel like complete circle. In some shape or form, even if it's a matter of just finding a smaller location to start it out, it just needs to happen just to close that loop. Those are two. I got the vegetarian restaurant because leaving these studio sessions at god-awful hours, there's nothing healthy to eat. It's only fast food. And I'm like, I know it's going to be expensive. I know it's probably going to run into debt like 98% of restaurants do the first year. I don't care. I want to see it happen. So I want to call that Rochelle's and then name the school after my pops, Keith. So in terms of just a legacy, I hope that I just want people to believe in themselves, not in a cheesy way, but just believe in what you currently have. I think a lot of people look at their circumstances and only see the things that are missing. I'm a product of, I have more than I need. I actually have an abundance. It may not look like a whole lot to you, but if I can do this with this Radio Shack microphone, if I can do this with a PlayStation game, if I can do this the only thing separating me was the doubts inside of my head and allowing the outer language to get into my brain, I can do something with that. But I think a lot of people that I come across, they're looking for the same thing that took me years to get to. I'm grateful when it happened. They're looking for permission, man. They're simply looking for permission to live their truth, to be there is nobody on earth qualified to be the first you. There's a combination that you have the lock to. I can give it as much detail as I want. I can never unlock that. It is yours. So if anything, I would want anybody that comes across my content to get the love in it, to get the belief in it, the belief in self. And then also, too, a Tony Robbins quote that life is always happening for you and not to you. It's one of my favorite quotes. Life is happening for you and not to you. If I don't live my life and die on that mountain, 90% of the things that I dreamed of accomplishing don't come true. Right?
Right.
So,
where can people find you, man? How can people connect with you?
First and foremost, CurtisKing.com is a great place to start because it'll lead you to all the social medias. But I'm actually staying a little bit away from social media. So I think the best part, if you want to communicate with me, YouTube. That's where I spend a majority of my time at. But on Instagram, I'm at Curtis King, 2 S's. Twitter, at Curtis King. I'm not going to be on X. I'm going to be gone in a second. I'm just getting all my Twitter data to get rid of it. I was on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok anymore. I'm specifically on YouTube. Follow One Course Until Success. So if you see me there, you'll get a daily collection of content, good conversation, a great community. I'm on there live, making music, reacting to stories and all that good stuff. But yeah, that's that. Or curtisking.com has everything. Courses, sound packs, my book, merchandise, all that good stuff. 2 S's.
Curtis King.
We have a final segment.
Yes.
And then I have a final question that we ask every guest.
Give it to me.
Final segment, essentially, I have just a list of 5 questions that Sarah have chosen. Okay. After hearing your whole story, we try to
that's okay. Nice.
Things that we think that might be a really good questions. Okay. They're supposed to be rapid fire, but feel free to talk about it. You want to drink water before we just start? Are you ready to go?
I'm good. I'm good.
Right, dude, he's in there, bro. I like.
I'm gonna drink that before this drive. I'm good.
How would you rate your life? And what could you do to improve it?
Is it a scale or just how to rate my?
What do you think, Sarah?
Scale.
A scale of what?
10.
1 to 10.
11 out of 10.
I don't know how you improve that, but
11 out of 10. I have more than I've ever could have dreamed of. All of my essentials are taken care of, and even when there's times where the money gets tight because I'm gonna reinvest into my business, these are great quality problems to have.
Damn. What's your greatest fear about getting older?
Being content. Being content, and I know I have something left. Leaving this life on full. I think about graves that are full of ideas, that are full of songs that never got wrote. I think Les Brown said something to this. People who wanted to do things, but they felt like life got in the way. Man, I really wish I could have wrote a song. I'm living that. One of my favorite sayings that I say in my videos used to be, in this life, you will not be full of life until you decide to live life to its fullest. Living life to its fullest for me doesn't mean having to jump out of an airplane, but I'll do it. Living life to its fullest doesn't mean like having to go out every day. For me, it's, first of all, being open to the idea of doing something new and being audacious enough to follow through. That's it. That's all I need. So moving forward, man, the only fear I have is to know that I have more to give and not give it. To look back and be like, damn, bro. When I imagine the old version of Curtis King, he better not be angry. Mm. He better look back at the 30-year-old me right now, 38-year-old me, and say, thank you. Thank you for making them sacrifices. Because I'm in a much better place, health-wise and mentally, because of them sacrifices you made. Thank you.
What's the scariest thing someone could tell you?
I'll tell you tomorrow. Tell me now.
I was like, wait, what?
Tell me now.
That's low-key scared me.
Tell me now. I get anxiety just thinking about that. Yo, man, I got to talk to you about something. I'll tell you tomorrow, though. No. Tell me now. My brain is way too active. I cannot calm it down sometimes. It will think like, especially my dad. Oh, my God. My dad will hit me one of those. Hey, D, when you get a chance, I need to talk to you. You never send me that. What is going on? What did you see on the internet? Did you saw me going off on somebody? You want to talk about that? Like, my brain just immediately goes there. And he'll be like, I just wanted to check up on you. So for me, that's probably that. Because I'm such a protector. I'm so like defensive. Like I'm so of my family. Like I'm making sure that they're always taken care of. I'm the one that runs towards the sound downstairs. For better or for worse. Even when my brain is like, this is probably not smart. Let's turn the light on. No. Let's go. Let's get this over with.
Jeez. That was a bar.
What's something you secretly wish people knew about you.
Something I secretly wish people knew about me. I don't know, man. I don't. That's a good question because I feel like I share on a regular basis. The majority of my life is in front of a camera, and I can't fake it. I have to be this, but man, secretly wish. I mean, maybe for those who think that I'm so serious, I don't know what that population is, but those who I wish they could see like that I'm so goofy. Like my sense of humor is like it sways from like raunchy to like dad jokes to like I'm all over the place because that has been my experience and I'm true to that. So I think that if anything, I wish people could see both sides, and I wish that they were okay with them living in the same place. Even if they're not, that's cool. But I just wish that people would understand, like, I've come too far to put on airs now. Come too far. What are we doing at this point? But, you know, when you get on the internet, people to see things and be like, that's not how you were talking last week. Because I was cussing somebody out. You're not nice. You should see me with my son. Like, but I've come to understand. There's a rapper that I used to work with named Copyright, and he said, "You should never make your goal to be understood, because when you get understood, your journey is over and people get bored. You should never seek to be understood." So I'm working on that.
I'm really excited about this. This last question. Very good job. Sarah knew what she was doing here.
Shout out to Sarah. All
Sarah
right.
knew what she was doing here. Song, I should say.
Okay.
If there was a movie about your life, TV show maybe, right now, which actor would best play you and why?
Denzel Washington. If I can get an AI version of a younger Denzel Washington, he is the perfect layer of sophistication, humor, seriousness in a snap of a finger, but also like he's believable in all those. And I feel like that's, if I had, and it's funny because that's probably what my dad would say that he would want to play him, right? Because he played Malcolm X.
That's what I was gonna say. I was waiting for it, bro. He got it.
I really do believe it would be Denzel, even though we don't look anything alike. I would just need somebody that is able to take on these different hats that I've had to wear and seamlessly be you in every single one of them and be multi-layered at the same time. Like, I know people say like, oh, I'm a very simple man. Like, I'm simple on the outside. I wear the same colors. I love black. I love, I have the same regimen, but the things that go on in his head, and when they finally come out, sometimes they come out in cool ways musically. Sometimes they come out in eye twitches, leg shakes, because it's like a explosion of ideas and a rush of energy that I don't know what to do with if I don't create. And so I think Denzel, man. He would either Denzel or Jamie Foxx.
Ooh.
Those are two that I think can really embody, like, when I saw Jamie Foxx humanize Mike Tyson in the same sentence as he showed the aggression, I was like, oh, that's the kind of range I need. Do
you think Michael B. Jordan could do you justice?
No. He's a great actor, but my wife got a crush on him, so no.
All right, let's move on to...
Shout out to Michael B. Jordan.
Hey, shout out to the homie, yeah?
I'll let Michael Jordan play me before Michael B. Jordan. Ain't no way.
And so my final question that I like to ask, again, everyone, this is the beginning of the never ending.
Man.
This is the beginning of the never ending. But if this is the ending, and I hate to do this, but I think it might be a good one. I normally don't, but I'm going to shift it a little bit. And your son, normally I say your great-great-great-grandchildren, but your son, you're not here, watches this.
what advice would you give him about life?
I would tell him that life simultaneously requires all that thinking that you're doing, and at the same time doesn't require it. The meaning of life is meaningless. What does that mean? It's also meaningless. I'll tell my son, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Whatever you feel like you want to be more of, if it comes in the form of somebody else, it's not for you. You're the coolest kid, the coolest teen, whatever you are. Like, God, I hope I'm right there watching this with you. You're the coolest as you are right now in your skin. Your diagnosis is not a handicap. Your diagnosis is your superpower. You have hyper focus ability. Your memory right now at 5, you can barely say your full name right now. But man, let somebody ask you to go pull up SpongeBob on that iPad.
Yo.
Your speed is impeccable. I tell him, hey, show me basketball. He goes on my iPhone. He can't spell or write that stuff. He'll navigate to the NBA logo. I say pizza. He'll go to the Domino's logo. Yeah. Who are you? You are perfect as you are. Your life story is not going to be a matter of knocking on doors looking for answers. You know why, son? Because you're inside the destination you're knocking on. You're on the other side of the door. Your life is going to be about cleaning that lens that you look through, those 2 eyes. It's going to be about cleaning that lens up. And if you're blessed to come across a lot of the amazing people I have, as I'm sure you will, they'll help you sometimes clean that lens. But they're not going to tell you anything new that you did not already have within you to understand. You're exactly who you're supposed to be. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. I was proud of you the day that you came on this earth, that I knew that you were even going to be a thing before you were a human being. You won. You won, son. You won. Now go be great. Do something. Do the things that I could only take it to a certain level. These bags under my eyes is not because I was being lazy. I was working my tail off, but it was not to just do what I did for you. It was to pass the baton.
To everyone who tuned in and watched into it in its entirety, we appreciate you.
Yeah.
And we would like to finally introduce a painting that was going to be donated to you. It's going to be put on our wall.
Hey.
This was made by MKC. Shout outs to Sarah right
Let's
here.
go.
Chose the right piece. Is there any specific reason? You didn't have a lot to choose from, but is there any specific reason why you chose this piece over other?
Ironically, I don't know how my wife going to feel about this, but I'll explain it later. I had an ex of mine. She was cool as hell. She made, I'd never had a handmade gift made for me from somebody that I was in a relationship with, in a relationship with. And she made something that were the very same colors, but it was a physical form. She had made the ocean and all this stuff. I'm like, what in the arts and craft are you doing here? And when I saw that, it almost gave me like goosebumps because I was like, I hadn't saw that fixture for years. So the nostalgia, this is during the Carson household. That's why I gravitated towards it. But in a very ironic swing of things, I better say this for my wife. She's so amazing at painting. She's so amazing at blending colors. And I thought the blend on that was supremely fire. So, and I got to say, man, I watched this show from afar, from the clips and the things that I saw on social media. And I was already blown away just by your demeanor and your ability to bring out answers out of your guests. This is by far one of the best interviews that I've ever had. I've done all kind of different publications. You can Google my name. The level of care and the level of patience that you showed with asking these things, man, I just got to give you props, and I'm excited to share this with my audience, and eventually, when my son is able to fully grasp these crazy stories that his dad is sharing, I'll be using this as a video to revisit. Can't say that about every interview. There's some of them I got to hide from. I'm not even going to hold you.
Thank you, everyone. Have peace, have love, happiness even after death. Good night, guys.